This guy returns to the place where his home used to be. He finds nothing but abandoned ruins and a bunch of thugs already waiting for him outside. They immediately surround him, and without saying a word, their red-haired leader appears behind our boy and sends him flying with one punch. Siwoo crashes straight through a stone wall without even taking his hands out of his pockets, like it was just a mild inconvenience. A notification instantly pops up, revealing the redhead's skill, and Siwoo immediately decides he's taking that for himself. He casually gets back on his feet, and while the goons are still trying to process what just happened, he vanishes. The next second, their leader is face first in the ground after getting absolutely folded by a lightning-fast attack. Then, right in front of the whole gang, Siwoo casually copies the guy's skill, doubling his already insane speed. Some of these clowns still don't realize they picked a fight with the worst possible person. They all rush him at once, and Siwoo simply wipes them all out with a single strike. They had no idea that he had just returned from the demon realm, where he spent 100 years fighting for survival before solo defeating the final boss. The boss's core allows him to return to Earth, and as a bonus, it grants him the ability to copy other hunters' skills. And the moment he devours the final boss's core, a blinding flash of light engulfs everything. In the next moment, he opens his eyes in a lush green forest. He didn't come back alone. There's this mysterious being occupying him, which lives inside his guts, and its name is Frey. He gets back on his feet, looking around, but he doesn't recognize this place at first glance, which of course surprises Frey. I mean, how does this dude not recognize his own home? That's just weird. But Siwoo reminds his companion that Earth's landscapes vary depending on the location. He then focuses on the flow of mana around him, and it feels suspiciously similar to being inside a gate. Checking his own mana, he quickly realizes something frustrating. His stats have been nerfed again. It looks like dimensional travel always seems to have side effects. The first time he was sent from Earth to another world 100 years ago, his stats plummeted. And now, it seems like the same story. Right now, he only has 20% of his former power, which is beyond frustrating. Even Frey is pissed. He wants Siwoo to recover as soon as possible, otherwise he won't be able to use his awesome skills. But Siwoo is just as annoyed because regaining his lost strength is going to take at least a decade. Hearing this, Frey straight up wants to cancel their contract. With Siwoo's current pathetic mana, he's basically useless to him. As they bicker back and forth, the scene cuts to a woman panting heavily as she runs for her life, chased by an orc. She's completely lost track of her teammates and has no clue what to do. More importantly, she has yet to figure out why in the hell there's an orc this early in the dungeon. She suddenly stumbles over her feet and trips. But before the orc can rip her apart, my guy Siwoo rocks that bastard with a single punch. And the best part is that he doesn't even bother looking in the orc's direction. That's how insignificant the threat is to him. Siwoo turns to the girl, wanting her to confirm whether the planet they're currently on is Earth. The already spazzed out girl manages to give a positive response. So he follows up with another question, asking if this is Korea and what year it is. Once again, the girl confirms with a yes and further clarifies that it's the year 2037. The mention of 2037 gets our boy thinking. He remembers that when he got sucked into that other dimension, it was 2027. If he is thinking right, then 100 years in the demon realm was only 10 years on Earth. Siwoo then proceeds to ask the name of the current president. The girl responds, saying it's Choi Dae-soo. This leaves Siwoo absolutely stunned, because as it turns out, he knows this guy. And judging by his expression, he doesn't seem to remember President Choi Dae-soo in good terms. As he mumbles all sorts of weird stuff under his breath, the girl starts wondering if this nutcase is just role-playing as a regressor. Siwoo then turns to her with another question. Since the flow of mana here feels off, he wants to confirm if they are inside a gate. The girl quickly affirms this, and further elaborates that they're inside the tutorial tower. Siwoo has never heard of this tutorial tower concept, so the girl proceeds to spill all the details. The tower appeared a few years ago, acting as a gateway for hunters. If you clear it, you awaken your abilities and gain skills. And the higher your awakening rank, the better your privileges, like getting recruited by the most powerful guilds. So naturally, everyone is rushing to clear the tower as soon as possible. Siwoo clearly remembers that back in his day, the Awakened just got their powers without all this extra crap. From what he understands, all he has to do is clear the tower to get out of here. So he asks her how long that usually takes. The girl explains that on average it takes about 8 weeks, but if you're skilled enough, you can clear it in at least 6 weeks. The current record holder is a second-generation genius hunter, Ryu Ji-won, who cleared it in just 3 weeks. But my guy is not that amazed or surprised. They suddenly sense the presence of something huge nearby, and soon enough, a giant mutated tiger appears, a creature known as the troll tiger. While the girl panics at the sight of this terrifying beast, Siwoo is still lost in thought, contemplating the record holder. To him, clearing the tower in 3 weeks isn't impressive at all, it's far too long. But since his own abilities have been nerfed, he's not sure if he can do it any faster either. Meanwhile, the tiger is swishing its tongue around its lips, ready to make a snack out of the duo. Eventually, the tiger lunges at them, but Siwoo is still deep in contemplation, thinking about how he'll approach the trial tower. Not wanting his train of thought to be interrupted, he simply punches the giant cat without even moving or looking back at the threat, and that one punch literally breaks the creature's jaw. Finally, Siwoo comes to terms with himself and decides that 5 days should be more than enough to clear the tower. 5 days flow by, and the scene then transitions to Min Sejun, the Empire Guildmaster. His assistant reports that someone just exited the tutorial tower. Hearing this, Sejun realizes that it's only been 8 weeks since the trial started, so clearing the tower in that time isn't bad at all. But then, the assistant reveals something shocking. The person who cleared the tower wasn't on the original entry list. There's no record of their batch, and no record of them entering the tower. And now, this mystery person is causing quite a commotion outside. When the assistant shows Sejun who the person is, his eyes widen in shock, because the face looks oddly familiar. He recognizes him as Hyung, his big brother who had disappeared 10 years ago. Now let's shift back to Siwoo and the girl accompanying him. The lady is absolutely boggled. She has yet to figure out how on earth did this guy clear the tutorial tower in just 5 days. But the way my guy has smashed this last remaining monster, it's clear how. The system promptly announces that the tutorial is complete, but when it tries to calculate Siwoo's skills and stats, it utterly fails. The gate opens, Siwoo is ready to walk out in order to start the next chapter of his life. Outside the tutorial tower, he's met by the examiner. People in the crowd can't help but murmur and whisper about Siwoo. Then, a big guy joins the scene, clearly not vibing with all the commotion. This big guy is said to be the Team 2 leader, and when the examiner takes note of his presence, he rattles out all the details to him. He mentions that 2 people have just cleared the gate, but what's concerning is that one of them wasn't on the entry list. The big guy scans Siwoo, and the first thing that stands out is how scratchless he is. It doesn't make sense given how scrawny Siwoo looks. There's no way he could have gotten away that easily. His curiosity is piqued, so he shoves the examiner aside and decides to interrogate Siwoo personally. He starts off by asking who the hell Siwoo is and why his name isn't listed in the logs. To this, Siwoo casually replies that he didn't go in through the entrance, but the big guy isn't buying it. He argues that if someone enters through the gate, they have to come out the same way. So how in the world did Siwoo exit without ever entering? Siwoo, however, remains completely nonchalant, refusing to take this oversized jackass seriously, and this attitude is really starting to get under the big guy's skin. Annoyed, he jabs a finger over Siwoo's head and straight up calls him a dimwit. Convinced that Siwoo must have some sort of camouflage skill that let him sneak through undetected, the big guy issues a direct threat. He makes it clear that if Siwoo doesn't spill the truth, he's as good as dead. But Siwoo keeps that same deadpan expression, which only serves to piss off this loudmouth even more, making him more aggressive and abusive with his words. Unfortunately for him, Siwoo doesn't have the patience to listen to some dude yap in his face, especially when said dude's breath smells like literal shit. So without hesitation, he orders this big pile of garbage to shut his damn mouth. Now this shithead is clearly itching for a fight, and Siwoo is more than ready to give him one. To further piss him off, Siwoo throws another jab, roasting him for his horrendous breath. And that does it. The big guy takes the bait, balls up his fat fists, and swings at Siwoo. But Siwoo remains unfazed. Then, the inevitable happens, and it all unfolds right in front of Guildmaster Sejun. Not long after, all the jackasses who dared to mess with Siwoo are laid out on the ground. The entire staff is in a frenzy. The guy they had reported for causing a disturbance not only fought the security team, but also disappeared right after. Guildmaster Sejun immediately orders his staff to pull up the CCTV footage. When they do, the recording shows the big guy and his goons charging at Siwoo. But in the very next second, Siwoo moves so fast that the camera completely fails to capture him. Meanwhile, all 3 of those idiots are knocked out cold. One of the staff members reports that Siwoo actually took down 5 hunters before disappearing. Since no one saw him leave, the only logical explanation the staff can come up with is that he must have used stealth abilities. But Sejun disagrees. As far as he can tell, Siwoo didn't use any gimmicks. The dude just moved insanely fast. Internally, Sejun is 1000% sure that this is Siwoo, his brother, and from what he's seeing, he hasn't changed at all from 10 years ago. He then turns to his staff and issues a direct order. They are to mobilize everyone in the Empire Guild to locate that guy immediately. However, he strictly prohibits them from engaging in any kind of confrontation with this mysterious person. All they need to do is politely introduce themselves and bring him to the office. Sejun wants to meet him personally. As the staff rush to carry out his orders, Sejun still can't wrap his head around where Siwoo has been all this time, only to suddenly show up now. The way he vanished and reappeared is suspicious. There has to be a solid reason behind it. He's sure that if Siwoo had been in Korea all these years, he would have come to Empire Guild multiple times. So now, more than anything, Sejun is curious to learn exactly where he's been. He then shifts his attention to the girl who exited the tutorial tower with Siwoo. But the poor girl quickly waves it off, claiming that she has no connection with him whatsoever. other than the fact that they just happened to exit together. Sejun believes her. In fact, he's genuinely impressed that she cleared the tower faster than expected. This only means one thing: she must have gained some pretty decent skills. Hearing this, the girl grows flustered and modestly admits that she managed to get an A-rank skill. Well, that's no small achievement, and Sejun is already considering recruiting her into the Empire Guild in advance, so he assures her that the contract terms will be tailored to her liking. All he hopes is that she'll be happy to sign up with them. And of course, the girl couldn't be happier about this opportunity. Without hesitation, she accepts it. Just then, an arrogant bastard steps into the scene, and of course the first thing he does is throw shade at the Empire Guild's reputation. Sejun immediately recognizes the loudmouth and warns him to watch his tongue. This bastard is none other than Hunter Ryu Jiwon, an S-rank hunter and the guildmaster of Gyumgang Guild, and standing beside him is Choi Sungil, another S-rank hunter who manages White Lion Guild. It looks like these two have also caught wind of the unregistered awakened who cleared the tower. Ryu Jiwon is surprised to see that the entire security team got their asses handed to them by just one person. Judging by the pathetic state of these guards, Ryu is certain that the guy must be packing some serious power. Choi Sungil shares the same sentiments, and this is exactly why he wants to locate the mysterious awakened as soon as possible. If this guy has awakened a high-grade skill, then he's likely to become a top-tier talent in the future. And neither of these guildmasters plans on letting him slip away. They both want him for themselves. Ryu Jiwon decides to turn it into a challenge. Whoever finds that mysterious awakened first gets to claim him. There are no rules about what kind of shady tactics they can use. Whoever gets to him first, keeps him. Choi Sungil is totally on board with this plan. Since they'll be searching for that mysterious awakened on their own, neither of them has time to waste. Without further delay, they set off to find the guy. And whoever finds him first has to inform the others. With that, Ryu Jiwon heads off, but not without throwing a jab, claiming he'll be the one to find the awakened, so there's no need for the others to even bother struggling. But Sejun isn't so sure he's going to let that happen. Anyway, Ryu Jiwon walks away and orders his assistant, Jinsik, to gather all the C and D rankers from Gumsang's Team A and deploy them for the search. But Jinsik seems unsure who exactly they're looking for. In response, Ryu Jiwon casually drops the bomb: it's Sejun's brother. Meanwhile, Siwoo is in his favorite restaurant, munching down on fried chicken. Frey is absolutely boggled. Out of all the things Siwoo could be doing after returning to Earth 100 years later, he chooses to devour some fried birds. After his chicken spree, he starts wandering the streets, which once again piques Frey's curiosity. He can't help but ask where Siwoo's headed. Siwoo doesn't bother explaining. He figures it's obvious. Of course, he's going home. When he finally arrives, stepping into his humble home, nostalgia hits him hard. He remembers rushing inside at dinner time, his mother preparing a meal while his father reads the newspaper. But all those moments are lost in the past. Now his home is nothing more than a rundown shell, empty and abandoned. He still can't remember his parents' faces. They say forgetting is a gift from God, but for him, it was a curse. He spent 100 years in the demon realm, an endless bloodbath on a strange, brutal planet. The dulling of human senses, the stopping of time, the weathering of the self. For what felt like an eternity, the curse of oblivion threatened to erase him. So he desperately clung to his memories, his younger siblings, his disciples, memories that refused to become mere reminiscence. Instead, they turned into obsession, a lingering attachment. But that was okay. Thanks to that, he survived for 100 years. Even Frey takes note of how this place feels like a ghost town, colder than the demon realm itself. Siwoo only came here to reminisce. Now that he's seen everything, it's time to move on. He decides to look for the neighborhood kids he used to hang out with. But first on the list is his brother Sejun he wants to meet. But his plan to reconnect with old friends hits a snag when a gang of thugs, fully armed, surrounds him from all directions. The bastard with red hair seems to be leading the gang. He introduces himself as Byeon Hakum, a C-rank hunter from the Vajra Guild. Siwoo remains calm and completely unbothered by the status of these lowlives. He's not in the mood for a skirmish either. Hakum feels mocked and reminds him again of his guild's name. But once again, my guy stays nonchalant because he does not give a single fuck. They keep exchanging jabs, with Siwoo effortlessly countering each one with an even sharper retort. This just gets under Hakum's skin, and his patience continues to wear thin. Fully aggravated, he finally decides to teach Siwoo the lesson he deserves. The next moment, Hakum throws a punch, a devastating blow that sends Siwoo crashing backward, slamming into the wall behind him. Hakum and his lackeys feel thoroughly satisfied, thinking they finally shut Siwoo up. But my guy is literally the calmest person ever, just lying there like a cool cucumber in a refrigerator. The fools assume he must have fainted from that single blow since he's not getting back up. Then, a system window flashes before Siwoo's eyes, explaining the ability Hakum just used. Apparently, it's a skill called Lightning Flash, a C-grade skill that grants instantaneous acceleration, making your body's speed more than double. You can move way faster, as long as your body can handle the friction. The skill isn't bad at all, so Siwoo casually asks Frey if he wants to eat it. Since this is the first skill Frey is about to consume after returning to Earth, he doesn't mind giving it a try. so my guy simply stands back up on his feet. Then, without warning, he dashes toward Hakum and delivers a devastating slap, so powerful that it literally sends Hakum slamming into the ground hard enough to shatter it. The goons, who were cackling like hyenas just moments ago, now stand in absolute terror. Siwoo then extends his hand, giving Frey the opportunity to devour the skill from this bastard. Soon enough, a dark magic circle forms beneath their feet. Within seconds, the skill extraction is complete. While it feels good to finally chomp down on a skill after so long, Frey can't deny the fact that it tastes way worse than the chicken they had earlier. Meanwhile, Hakum, now with his pride in shambles, calls for his minions to attack Siwoo all at once. Like a bunch of reckless idiots, they charge at him, actually believing they stand a chance. Siwoo just tells Frey to put their newly acquired skill to use. The moment Frey complies, my guy explodes into motion, dashing with godlike speed and taking down every last one of these fools, like they're nothing more than mosquitoes. One of the bastards dashes towards Siwoo, attempting to strike him with a skill, but Siwoo easily renders the bastard's attack futile by smashing his knee into the guy's gut, causing him to cough up blood. The bastard was using a vital point strike, a technique that automatically targets an opponent's weak spots. Since this bastard clearly can't make proper use of the skill, Siwoo decides to borrow it for himself. But before things escalate into everyone's demise, Sejun arrives on the scene. The moment Siwoo looks back at Sejun, he notices the reflection of his brother in his eyes, and the once heated battlefield transforms into a sweet reunion of two brothers. Now, to understand what happened, let's rewind 20 years to when the gates first appeared on Earth. It goes without saying that these gates unleashed chaos and destruction, bringing monsters into the world. This was also when the first generation of awakened individuals emerged, their powers awakening as the gates appeared. There were no police, no laws to handle the situation. It was an era of barbarism, where everyone was inexperienced. In this chaotic world, Siwoo and his little brother Sejun, who lost their parents early, had to survive by any means necessary. Siwoo was the first generation awakened. He dropped out of school to become a hunter and raise his helpless little brother, who was still just an infant at the time. And so, Siwoo, the caring brother that he was, took care of Sejun during those dark times. In the present, Siwoo follows his brother to their new home, where everything looks lavish. Sejun is totally smitten by the place and wonders if his brother took out a loan or earned everything on his own. But Siwoo claims that the money came from skills he learned from his older brother. Since it's a house they're both supposed to live in, there's also a room for Siwoo. Internally, Siwoo can't believe the person in front of him is his same brother who disappeared nearly 10 years ago. Siwoo keeps talking non-stop, feeling happy that he'll be able to raise his little brother again. He can see how much his little brother has worked hard, and that makes him feel incredibly grateful. Seeing Siwoo jabber on so much, Sejun has no doubt this is indeed his real brother. Sejun then brings up how he's been searching so hard for his older brother. He wants to know everything. Where did he go? Why did he go? And why did he choose this time to show up after all this time? Well, Siwoo has a lot to say. 100 years worth of adventures. But that's a story that can only be told if the two of them sit down for a heart-to-heart. So later, we see them sitting together as Siwoo explains everything that happened. In summary, 10 years ago, after Siwoo defeated the fourth Demon Lord, he was transported to another dimension by an artifact the Demon Lord had. In this other world, he met Predator, a being who could extract other people's skills. For 100 years he grew with that ability, seeking out dragons with dimensional magic. Once he defeated the Dragon King and obtained the dimensional orb that Dragon carried, he was finally able to return home. And his friend Predator, who is also known as Frey, crossed over to Earth with him and is now inside his body. This revelation about Frey living inside Siwoo's body creeps the hell out of Sejun. It only gets worse when Siwoo casually reveals that Frey is basically a parasite living in his gut. Siwoo admits that this whole lore dump probably sounds like absolute nonsense, but he promises his younger brother that he's not tweaking anything. Well, it goes without saying that Sejun trusts his brother. Given how much the world has drastically changed over the past 2 decades, he's not even surprised by this story, no matter how absurd it sounds. Right now, he's just glad his brother is back. Now that Siwoo has come clean about himself, he wants his little brother to do the same, fill him in on everything he missed over the past 10 years. He especially wants to know what the hell happened in this country that allowed a guy like Choi Dae-soo to become president. Since Siwoo disappeared, Choi Dae-soo blatantly took credit for the defeat of the fourth Demon King. With the title of the greatest hunter of the first generation and his fabricated reputation, he managed to ascend to the presidency. Now he keeps making policies that work against Empire Guild. But now that Siwoo is back, Sejun is concerned about what that zesty-ass shithead might try to do to his brother. But Siwoo is not worried at all. In fact, he finds it downright laughable that someone as incompetent as Choi Dae-soo managed to fool everyone with his fake SS rank title. Speaking of Choi, Siwoo suddenly remembers the guys who attacked him at their house earlier. The leader of that gang claimed to be from the Gumgang Guild, so Siwoo wants to know if they're Choi Dae-soo's lackeys. To that, His younger brother responds with a firm no, because the guild Choi Dae-soo runs is called Infinite. There are 7 representative guilds in South Korea, collectively known as the Heptagram. The guild Sejin runs, Empire, is one of them. The others are Infinite, Vajra, White Lion, Fighting Warrior, Azure Flower, and Frozen Soul. Among them, Vajra belongs to a second-generation hunter, Ryu Ji-hwan. Just the name of this bastard is enough to set Sejun's blood boiling. To think that snake is after his senior brother, who just returned home after 10 years. Siwoo then asks his brother about the disciples, the ones who always stood by his side. To that, Sejun explains that they've been living apart for a while, so they haven't connected with each other recently. Xiaolong went back home, and Kang Yohwa is under Choi Dae-soo's control. Well, Siwoo wasn't expecting to hear that, but he's hoping Minjun is still around. But contrary to what he thought, his junior brother drops the grim news that Minjun was killed, which absolutely stuns our boy. He doesn't waste any time and interrogates his brother about who killed him. Sejun explains that Minjun's body disappeared, so they couldn't figure out who the culprit was. The only ones who could kill a hunter are other hunters, or unregistered awakened individuals. At that time, HMCS even participated in the investigation, but there was no progress. Siwoo starts feeling dazed as he hears one brutal truth bomb after another. He then asks what's the deal with HMCS, to which his brother explains that HMCS is essentially the Hunter Special Investigation Unit, an international agency that operates at the front lines of hunter-related crime. HMCS has the authority to investigate and arrest all awakened criminals, so they're basically like the Hunter Police. Siwoo seems quite intrigued by this new faction, so he curiously asks his brother if he has any ties to the agency. Sejun quickly catches on to what his senior brother is implying, and can tell that he wants to join HMCS. If it's an investigation you want to do, then Sejun is willing to lend his own guild's information team, as they don't have to involve themselves with HMCS. But Siwoo has other plans, beyond just gathering information. His brother once again reminds him that those guys handle cases like murder, so going there is not the best option for him right now. He wants his brother to rest first, and once he's fully recovered, he can start thinking about what to do next. This is when Siwoo reminds his junior that he spent 100 years fighting in that other world, so he's done all the shady stuff you can think of. He doesn't believe he lacks any experience in any field. Well, it looks like Sejun has run out of arguments, so he has no choice but to concede to his senior brother's demands. Eventually, he decides to hook his brother up with a guy named Yi Yeji from Frozen Soul, who is a manager in that hunter agency. Siwoo is happy to hear this and is looking forward to it. Sejun takes note of how Siwoo's face is the same, but the atmosphere around him has changed. This makes Sejun curious about what could have happened in that old world to cause him to change so drastically. Meanwhile, our boy is busy digging about HMCS, and this is when he is hit by a twist. The team leader of HMCS's Gangbuk district team is Hwang Jong-gu, a 1.5th generation hunter. And as it turns out, Siwoo knows this guy like the back of his hand. 2 days later, we find ourselves at the HMCS headquarters in Gangbuk district. Inside, a ponytailed man is throwing a tantrum. He seems irritated that once again, someone from higher up has sent a rookie to join his team. And since he's the team leader, it naturally annoys him to have yet another rookie under his command. This guy, as you might have already guessed, is Jong-gu. He reminisces about the old days when battlefields were unpredictable, and strength was all that mattered. Back then, hunters wrote wills before heading into missions, fully aware they might not return. He also recalls how, about 10 years ago, he almost died in a raid. It happened because he was still a rookie, and the wound he suffered was fatal. Had he died, the party would have lost its biggest powerhouse. But it was a single healer with incredible abilities who saved him. And, well, we all know who that healer was. That very healer has just made his grand entrance into the office. Siwoo calls out to his old friend, addressing him by his previous name Byung-gu, and immediately questions why the hell he changed it. To jog Byung-gu's memory, he reminds him that he's the very guy with those insane healing abilities who saved his life back then. It doesn't take long for Byung-gu to recognize him, and when he does, he's absolutely floored. Seeing Hunterman Siwoo standing before him, gracing their office with his presence, is the last thing he expected. Later we see Byung-gu formally introducing Siwoo as a new recruit for the Gangbuk team. While Byung-gu is letting his staff know that they better help Siwoo with anything he needs, his sudden shift in attitude doesn't go unnoticed. One of the female staff members looks visibly disappointed. Just a moment ago, their supposedly great and strict team leader was complaining about a new recruit, and now he's acting like a total pushover. But the guy standing beside her quietly tells her to keep her mouth shut. Judging by the team leader's reaction, it's clear that this newcomer is no ordinary rookie. Byung-gu, meanwhile, turns to the female staff member Sunga, and, in his usual arrogant tone, commands her to follow him to the concrete room for a quick briefing. Seeing the ridiculous amount of protocol their team leader is giving to this guy, the other staff members begin to suspect that maybe this new recruit is a 3-star. Later, we find ourselves in the office, where, as expected, the team leader is absolutely swooning over Siwoo, frantically making coffee and doing everything possible to max out his hospitality. Let's not forget about Kim Sunga, who's here to brief our boy. She's the gangbook team's data manager. Siwoo finally speaks up, requesting records of all hunters who were killed over the past 20 years. He wants her to summarize the data and pass it over to him. His extravagant demand leaves Seonga stunned. 20 years worth of data is an enormous amount, and they'd have to submit a report to the Hunter Association just to get access to it. But the team leader, clearly irritated by her hesitation, tells her to just do what she's told. He further reassures Siwoo that the data manager will handle it quickly and efficiently, so there's nothing to worry about. Seonga then asks if he's only referring to humans, to which he replies that cases officially recognized as murders by HMCS will do. He also wants a list of hunter killers who are still at large. As far as Siwoo is concerned, killing an awakened is nearly impossible unless the attacker is also an awakened of equal strength. And if someone managed to kill a top-tier hunter like Minjun, the culprit is likely a professional. Even if they had already been caught or killed, if they were an awakened, there should be a record of them somewhere. For now, tracking them down takes priority. Seonga has found the information, but is not sure how she should share it. Siwoo simply tells her to just send it to his phone for now. Suddenly, someone calls out to the team leader for a private chat. The guy reports that they've received a request for support from the police. A full-blown war has broken out between gangs, and some of them are awakened. The reason the police do not want to interfere is the fact that one of the gangs involved is Cerberus. This annoys the team leader to no end, while Siwoo has no idea what Cerberus even is. That's when Seonga explains that Cerberus isn't just some typical gang. They're arms traffickers and contract killers. There are even allegations that they're involved in hunter trafficking, which makes them far too dangerous for the regular police to handle. This piques Siwoo's curiosity, especially the part about hunter trafficking, because if that's true, it might be linked to the murder of one of his disciples, whose body was never found. So he tells Byung-gu to take him along. The team leader, annoyed at being called by his old name, reminds Siwoo that it's Jong-gu now. The scene transitions to the battlefield. The Bloodless Reaper gang has just gotten their asses handed to them by Cerberus. Kang-ho, Cerberus's second-in-command, is feeling pretty smug after wiping them out. Beside him is Jikin, the third-in-command, cracking dark jokes about how easily they cut through their enemies. As these bastards revel in their victory, their moment of celebration is suddenly interrupted. A massive explosion rocks the area. The one who just blew out the building wall to make his entrance is, of course, it's our boy, casually walking into the scene. Judging by how full of himself Kang-ho is, who is running his mouth non-stop, Siwoo is certain this guy has killed a few hunters to be riding this high horse, which makes him absolutely thrilled. He wants this bastard to show what he's got. By the way, this shitty website seems to have left out a few panels, because judging by their conversation, we clearly missed the part where they actually fought Siwoo. And right now, they're feeling completely hopeless. Because our boy is on a whole different level. Even though he came alone, he's still making them all run for their lives. After multiple failed attempts to take him down, Kang-ho finally goes all out, activating his skill, Full Body Armor, a B-rank ability that enhances resistance to both magical and physical attacks. As Kang-ho charges forward, his lackeys follow suit, and it doesn't take long for Siwoo to take them all down. Not only does he defeat them, he also makes sure to steal their skills. It looks like the only reason Siwoo came here was to gauge his own strength. He wanted to check how strong awakened criminals have become these days. And since these guys looked like a lost cause, he figured it was best to cut them off early. That's when the team leader finally arrives, reporting that he has cleared out the entire upper floor of the club. But the poor guy is left completely baffled when he notices all the bodies littering the ground. Siwoo, however, proudly clarifies that he left one guy alive, the hotshot among all the garbage, because they needed at least one person alive for interrogation. The team leader, worried, starts ranting about the legal protocols, how they were supposed to capture them alive. But since those bastards attacked first, he ultimately decides to just frame it as self-defense. The real reason he's so spazzed out is that these guys were ruthless enough that there were already warrants for their immediate execution. But to think that Siwoo dealt with them alone is just absolutely insane. Now, he has no doubts about why Siwoo had the reputation of a mad dog. As Siwoo and the team leader talk, we cut to a coward hiding under some furniture. Wasting no time, he calls his senior and reports that the entire Cerberus gang has just been wiped out of existence. The prominent figure on the other end of the call is Gert, an A-rank hunter, the guild master of Hong Kong's Red Guild. Gert is on the move, immediately wanting to see his brother. The association members apologize and offer their condolences to him. But this man has come here with a single objective and asks for his brother. He learns that Jikin's body is currently placed for a forensics investigation. Hence, they require his assistance to verify the body so that they can move ahead with the procedures. The redhead hunter likes the way this conversation is going. He had previously learned that the one responsible for taking his brother down shared a connection with the HMCS organization. The agents of the associations have yet to verify such claims. Gert, now irritated, questions if he can leave the premises of his own volition. The agents inform him that it won't be allowed, as he's supposed to stay in his designated spot for the time being. If he fails to comply, the association will act under the international law, forcing him to face deportation penalties. In this conversation, Gert is the one getting slammed. Although he's ticked, he now knows they're allowing him temporary freedom because of what happened to his brother. He tasks his assistant, Ryu Yanpeng, to do his dirty deeds for him. This guy is a B-rank hunter, so he's no joke either. As for Gert, he's steaming with fury, engulfed with the desire to avenge his brother. Let's go over to Siwoo, who's casually chilling. He learns from his brother that Minjun's murder additionally followed up by his house getting robbed. The neat part about the mana in this world is that it can easily be traced and analyzed, revealing the hunter's attributes and rank. Hence, the association can easily investigate the suspects responsible for the crime, but in this case, the culprit is a cunning person who left their tracks covered. Minjun was an archaeologist with important valuables of research, and yet not a single item containing his mana was left behind. At this point, Siwoo amuses the possibility of this being a regular burglar instead of some pre-planned assault. But this remark comes across as ridiculous to Sejun. Siwoo backs up his answer, claiming that the stolen items were valuable according to the report. And that means there's a greater chance of leaving a piece of evidence behind. Siwoo deduces that if the culprit really wanted to cover their mana traces, the best way to do that would be to burn the whole place down, which kind of makes sense. This means that Minjun's murder and the robbery were two different crime incidents. Someone just so happened to take advantage of his demise. Siwoo continues that he's found more cases like this in the past, so it's possible. He wants to get things rolling and crack the case, even though it sounds ridiculous to his brother, who thinks that Minjun's possessions may be a lost cause at this point. Siwoo's a bold one and is willing to crack the case. This unwavering confidence cracks a while after. He's pissed as hell in an alleyway, blaming the number of thieves sneaking around, and yet there weren't any valuable leads. Siwoo runs into a dead end, now raging like a maniac. Bro needs a Snickers bar after this. Anyway, Sherlock Holmes happens to get lucky and sneaks up a conversation between two random hooligans. They're talking about the organization locking down on multiple locations and wiping out entire groups without any warrants or reports. The organization has enough influence and authority to look into any matters related to hunters worldwide. So they don't really give a damn if they're straight up sending criminals to hell for it. The organization is so brutal that the worst thing encountering them isn't a prison cell, but your death ground itself. At the same time, skilled hunters aren't exactly the types to join an organization like the HMCS. They much rather associate themselves with a guild that offers a higher package. Still, whoever's causing so much trouble is a threat to these guys. So they amuse themselves by relocating their warehouse just to be safe. Having heard enough, Sherlock Holmes blows his cover and straight up asks about their warehouse. He freaks the ever-living shit out of them. Rabbit Face over here is scared shitless because he recognizes Siwoo as the man responsible for cleaning the criminals up. The boss immediately calls for his men as an emergency call-out. Siwoo, still not bending a knee, inquires about the location of their warehouse, this time with a threatening tone. The boss is willing to sacrifice his stickman for an assistant just to save his life. Luckily, his men get to the scene right on time, making him feel assured of his chances in this battle. The arrogant boss thinks that just because they've outnumbered the HMCS investigator, they've secured their victory, and that they'll easily finish him off now. But our boy is really happy that they went through the trouble of lining themselves up for him, because now, he can freely target and practice his new skill. Activating his skill, Siwoo glows a shimmer of golden light, blinding the men completely. Before long, all of the men are defeated with an electrical strike. He stands over the lackey and asks if he's ready to reveal the location of the warehouse now. Seeing this monstrous investigator take out all their men, he helplessly questions if Siwoo is even human. To this, our boy gleefully responds, declaring himself a lunatic. The scene ends there, with the assistants all captured. Siwoo is able to get ahead thanks to Minjun's secret research journal. It is actually well guarded by a security spell, which adds to the explanation as to why no one else can crack it. The lock requires some of the owner's original mana, and Siwoo isn't really looking for the contents of the book, but rather the mana stored inside. He decides to call Byunggu, requesting a car and a cleanup squad to take care of the criminals he just swept. As for him, he's got somewhere to be. In the next scene, we come to learn of a neutral zone, kind of a secret market where strange abilities are exchanged. It's a skill-based market called the Black Skyfall. Here, one lady is playing her cards. I suppose she must be practicing witchcraft or some shit because she senses Siwoo's arrival. This woman is the great shaman, Mumyung, just one of the 5 chiefs of the market. Siwoo explores the sector, remarking that not much has changed from a decade ago. Frey mentions that he's quite the popular guy with everyone turning their attention towards him. Our boy doesn't want to beat up people here since it will end up in trouble for him. Intriguingly, Mumyung comes out to meet him. She had been meaning to talk to him. Inside her premises, she comments on how he hasn't changed a day in a decade. She wonders what business he's been up to. After all, he was gone for a lot of time. Siwoo doesn't want to mansplain the entire century-long shit show he went through. Instead, he hands her the secret journal to extract the mana. Mumyoung enjoys his straightforward demeanor and reminds him of the procedure. Siwoo already knows it well, as he slices a bit of his palm to draw blood. The logic behind it is linked with mana. Returning mana to its original state is near enough impossible. A comparison can be made with curry. A person can remove ingredients like vegetables from the finished curry, but they can't exactly separate the powder, water, and other ingredients, or return them to their original state. But this kind of impossible situation is overturned by the specialty of this woman, who goes by unnamed. She's a mana hacker, using the powers that defy causality itself. It's a superpower only she possesses. This is also why society views people like her with a cunning eye, afraid that these guys might be criminals in disguise. Anyway, she hacks the mana and enjoys having finished the process. Even Frey thinks she's creepy as hell. She doesn't charge him either. Siwoo is in a hurry and leaves without explaining anything to her. The baddie remarks on him as a mysterious guy, while Frey is seriously creeped out by her. Even Siwoo wonders what's causing Frey to be so upset. It was just a ritual involving a small portion of his blood as a contract. Anyway, Siwoo's next destination is the History Research Institute, where Minjun's murder took place. Arriving inside, he finds no trouble walking around because it belongs to the Empire Guild. Coming here, Siwoo's surprised because he sees lingering phantoms of the ones who are still unaccepting of Minjun's death. Siwoo is interested in checking the memories of what happened during the day of the crime. To achieve that effect, he casts Mana Remembrance, allowing him to experience the emotions of the mana wielder via a medium. This causes Siwoo to witness an avatar version of events. Unfortunately, he can't see vividly because the skill doesn't show the target's memories and only fixates on their emotions. Now Siwoo is smart enough to know that Minjun was more than a capable hunter. That means whoever was responsible for taking him out must have been extremely skilled to have outclassed him. Siwoo sees his final moments go down and realizes that the culprit is actually one of the VIPs. Minjun shared a deeper connection to another organization, apart from the research institution. Frey wonders if he's doing all right, since even in the demon realm, all our boy cared about was about his disciples and siblings. A century had passed, and yet, the first thing that crossed his mind after arriving on Earth was to check for them. Now, he's just found one of his disciples wastes away into nothingness. Frey knows that it must be hitting him hard on the inside. Siwoo chooses not to focus on the subject, but his companion can sense that his emotions are spiraling up like crazy. It's just that Siwoo doesn't express those emotions on his face, no matter how much pain he's inside. Siwoo emphasizes that he's alright and that it's natural for him to have a breakdown after a century at least. In a surprising turn of events, Ryu pops up from behind. He's been seriously annoyed with how much he had to tail our boy throughout the day. Ryu orders him to come with him for a visit, but Siwoo confidently points out all 6 of his goons hiding in secret. Ryu is impressed by his observation and decides to offer him a choice between 2 options. The first possibility is that he happily complies and goes with the group without causing trouble. The second one, the hard way, is him getting cut up and dragged all the way to their leader. I bet you guys won't accept what he does next. Our boy willingly puts his hands up in the air, surrendering without causing trouble. Ryu tells his men to tie him up, but that's exactly what Siwoo was looking for. He baited one of the men and sliced them open, revealing his true intentions. Now provoked, the rest of the guys try to jump on him Jujutsu Kaisen style. But Gert finally shows his face, declaring that he'll be the one to clean up his target. Siwoo is unfazed and welcomes him to try. Gert starts off with a confirmation, checking if he's truly the man responsible for putting an end to Jiken of the Cerberus gang, his brother. To that, Siwoo calmly expresses that he didn't really regard the man's name, nor did he care to ask anyone. All he did was simply clean up a bunch of trash. This heartless remark sets Gert off rails as he lunges forth to rip him to shreds. The redhead's confidence gets the better of him, but our boy's not worried at all. He casts instant healing, surprising the A-rank hunter who goes on the extreme offensive from the get-go. Even Gert's underlings are shocked that Siwoo was able to block an A-rank hunter's attacks. Siwoo makes sure to keep the rest of these blockheads out of the fight by casting his lightning flash skill. This instantly takes care of the mob characters since he's more interested in facing someone powerful. They can't believe that he's a powerful healer on top of an incredible combat specialist. The guy was able to analyze Gert's movements to perfection and respond accordingly. The A-rank hunter has never met another hunter with this level of precision, and deems our boy a threat unlike any other. This means Gert's only chance of winning is to go full power. But oh boy, bless this guy's delusional heart. Siwoo wants to remind them that if a crime has been committed, no matter who the culprit is, they must pay for their crimes. The awakened criminals just so happen to have a hunter hunting them down. That's Siwoo's role, and yet these arrogant assholes think that they're the ones being wronged, instead of focusing on the damages they have caused to society as a whole. Gert doesn't like Siwoo's explanation, as it implies that he's free to kill any criminal so long as they commit a crime. He strongly defends his fallen brother, who couldn't possibly comprehend the life they shared. Jiken ultimately became a criminal to take care of Gert while he was defenseless. It was his way of ensuring both of their survival. Gert wants to repay the investigator for taking a life carelessly without understanding the value of it. He activates his Wolf Fang skill, arguably one of the strongest weapons at his disposal. Just one look at the red mana is enough to tell Siwoo that he isn't supposed to dodge this attack. He requests Frey for the usage of another skill, even though his companion is exhausted after supplying him with so much resources today. Siwoo promises to take care of the fight on his own after the skill's usage. He casts Neutralization, a hidden class spell that not only identifies the opponent's spell level, but also returns it and cancels out the spell with a magic circle. Gert can't believe what just happened. Not even Ryu can fathom what this seemingly ordinary healer had just done. This guy had just nullified an A-rank hunter's powerful skill. It was unbelievable. At this point, they're the ones being overpowered by one man. Siwoo goes on the offensive and mocks Gert's sentimental approach by making an example of the people who suffered just as much as Jiken, and yet didn't lead a life of crime. He shoves a powerful attack against the guildmaster, sending him flying from the impact. That strike of his just now left a bruise on his arm just blocking the blow. Gert doesn't want his men to intervene. He analyzes the situation, knowing that there's no way for Siwoo to consistently cast a neutralization spell. It's inevitable for him to run out of mana, which is why he plans to force our boy into a battle of endurance. Using the same skill from before, Gert concentrates his energy into a focused point and attempts to strike him down. But Siwoo casually dodges the blow without costing any spells of his own. In response, he smartly follows up with a knee to Gert's face, before blessing him with a rainfall of punches, mocking the criminal for overextending his skill when his body can't even keep up. In a fit of rage, Gert manages to send Siwoo on the back foot. He then orders two of his men to restrain Siwoo while he's defenseless in the air. Ryu is a little irritated about his boss's double-mindedness. First, he didn't want them to intervene, and now he's asking for their help. Anyway, Siwoo is restrained by chains as Gert comes through to deliver one final finishing move to end his life. This time, he wants to make sure there's nothing left of the guy to heal, but this man is too chill. He just doesn't give a damn even with the odds stacked against him. Siwoo congratulates both Gert and Jiken for leading a life of crime before using the lifesteal spell to absorb the very life essence of his target. This winds up in a gruesome experience for his opponent, whose body eats itself away over time. Even Ryu is freaking horrified to see his leader become a zombie corpse. Fun fact, this is the first skill that our boy awakened. It's the real deal, and he makes it very clear to them that he was never an ordinary healer. This spell involves manipulation of the life force itself, enabling one to use life spirit sorcery. With him down, he turns to Ryu, who is flailing like a fish in the pond. Our boy doesn't care for his yapping or pleading and karate chops the crap out of him. He turns his attention to the camera that each investigator is armed with. Siwoo is hoping that the recording went through in one piece, just to make sure that he could catch the evidence of him fighting in self-defense. Byung-gu and the others actually watched his whole fight go down, and their reactions are priceless. Because this idiot actually pressed the live button instead of the record button, allowing nearly 6,000 viewers to watch his broadcast. This ended up a really sticky situation because it jeopardized the reputation of the organization itself. Turns out that the broadcasting feature has been around for 2 years, used for talent recruitment for the most part, but it ended up being a failed project of sorts. From this footage alone, people have come to realize that someone absurdly strong has joined the organization. But the question is, why? Anyway, the more important issue is that this same person killed someone brutally, a guildmaster. And while the investigator didn't commit any specific crimes, it is still something to take into consideration. Finally, Korea's most powerful man, Choi Dae-soo, joins the discussion. Just a few days later, at the Empire Guild's cafeteria, Siwoo was hogging a meal without giving a damn about the video that was released to the public. Even Frey is upset that he's being disturbed during a meal. He's loving the food here and hopes to gobble down often because of how good it is. Anyway, the live broadcast of Gert's defeat is spiraling like crazy on the internet. Thanks to it being a body cam, Siwoo's face was barely visible in the shit show that went down. If Dae-soo, the president, found out about this, he'd suffer major consequences. Then there's the fact that the president has already tried his very best to erase any traces of our boy's existence for the past 10 years. This means he's a clear threat, and the most viable strategy is to lay low. But being the good brother he is, Siwoo doesn't care about the consequences, and simply makes a lighthearted joke about the situation. Anyway, Siwoo is encountered by a bunch of names that he met at the tower. Shinjitsu recently joined their guild, awakening as an A-ranker too, all thanks to Siwoo's efforts. But that makes the guildmaster wonder if there is a seminar for the rest of the hunters to gather. His thoughts are confirmed. 2 more hunters, Chuhamin and Yamato, are introduced, both featuring from different guilds. There's also Taiji from the Imperial Guild, and he's heard a lot of stuff about Siwoo from their guildmaster. Anyway, They're really proud of his achievements for the organization. Siwoo returns the pleasantries, while Haman becomes suspicious of him right off the bat. He knows that Siwoo is responsible for taking down Gert, who was supposed to be his lifelong rival. It almost feels like nonsense. Haman doesn't buy it and considers it all bullshit. In response, the guildmaster shows a serious expression, strongly sharing that he's being rude to someone important in the guild's main premises. Haman chalks it down to the Empire Guild being overly strict instead of correcting himself. Anyway, this turns into an argument, causing the other two hunters to draw away from the situation. Haman refuses to back down and doesn't fear the consequences of being reported to the seniors. He talks highly of his accomplishments, but the detail of him being Xiaolong's disciple strikes out to Siwoo the most. Haman is ranting on, causing Siwoo to shut him down, stating that he should just find him some other time on his own if he's that desperate. He also mocks his master for failing to train this guy in proper combat. It's a strong insult that strikes a chord with Haman, who really would have taken forceful methods if they were in a different guild location. Kicking away the chair in frustration, he threatens Siwoo to be careful at night. Bro is out here acting like the boogeyman. Dude needs to stop using high school level threats. Anyway, the guildmaster chooses to forget everything, even assuring his brother that he'll take care of the slimy rat. But Siwoo expresses that it's all good, as this guy is nothing more than the student of his own disciple, so he's okay with him being arrogant. Skipping ahead, we get to see Jianho, the branch director, sharing a talk with the guildmaster Sungil of the White Lion. He wants to issue an apology, beyond the matter of the collaboration. The apology is for the incident caused by one of their members lashing out against the HMCS member. However, the branch director merely refuses such an apology, claiming that someone like him, the leader of a guild, shouldn't apologize for such a behavior. In fact, the branch director has easily figured this guy out, pointing out his intentions of scouting instead of apologizing. Unfortunately, Jianho is unrelenting and refuses to let any guild get their hands on our boy. The guildmaster realizes that he's been figured out, but he finds it strange for someone like Siwoo to offer support in a prison as his current mission. These types of requests are usually handled by larger guilds instead of the organization. Then again, the branch director is optimistic about the future to come and believes they will experience a shift in progress. Sungjil concurs and argues that he would be alright with Hunter Chu Haman, the troublemaker, apologizing to Siwoo on his own. To that, the branch director is fine with it. He thinks it's a personal matter that needs to be addressed by both parties. That marks the end of their meeting. Leaving the building, Sungjil finds himself in a contemplative thought. He doesn't want to just give up on someone of such high talents like that, so he tells his secretary to hit up Haman for a trip, and to also tell him to behave. The secretary asks about the location of their meeting. Sungjil declares Incheon to be the destination. Fast forwarding ahead, everyone now knows that the HMCS organization volunteered for the support request. The only problem being, they have yet to arrive. The chief doesn't get why they're being so annoying, and seems to be fed up with criminals beefing against each other. The current report involves Sherry Volk, a dangerous individual who they underestimated after he got arrested. But slowly after that, he went crazy and lost his senses. Despite mana suppression activated, this guy managed to easily beat the crap out of 5 guys. He maintains a high profile for being a unique criminal, and many agencies have gone through hell just to try and catch him. That man, Sherry Volk, sits in his cell, having received a new instruction. He learns that the organization is already making its move, so if he wants to get out of the cell for good, he's going to need to cause some trouble inside the prison. As for our protagonist, he's just arrived at the Incheon Awakened prison to fulfill his mission. Haman, on the other hand, is having a temper tantrum after discovering the situation stirred up in the prison. He's seriously annoyed that his guildmaster is obsessed with recruiting and sent him on a stupid mission. Locating a car nearby, Haman rushes to catch up to him the best he can. He's fed up with the mission and wants to ask for overtime pay, just for the inconvenience his guild leader has caused him. Meanwhile, in the transport vehicle, we get to see Siwoo chilling next to the main target. Sherry tries to play provocatively with him and questions if this kid is seriously the new warden. Siwoo bluntly denies such claims. Sherry mocks him for being a special guild member who is overly confident in his skills. The hilarious part is, Siwoo turns to him and goes, "I don't even know who you are," like he's Thanos or something. Sherry is underwhelmed and almost feels offended that this guy's unaware of the situation at hand, or why he's being transported in the first place. Siwoo humiliates him, asking if they decided to transport him because he yaps all the time and never shuts up. At this point, the criminal is at his limit, and explains his lore like he's some evil Sigma male. He's proud of having beaten down 5 criminals, as if to intimidate the guy sitting next to him. Sherry's a little shell-shocked that the guilds managed to send one normal-looking punk after a powerful awakened criminal known for being dangerous and unpredictable. But our boy is just chill-maxing and sips on his coffee, while Sherry tells him that he's utterly fucked. Exactly then, the transport vehicle blows up and gets sent flying. Sherry angrily kicks the door open for having nearly killed him. The old man calculated that he wouldn't just die from a ploy like that, and pokes fun at him for being leashed. That aside, they're curious if he managed to deal with the officer next to him. Sherry confidently claims that he destroyed his temple, which means Siwoo's as good as dead after sipping his last cup of coffee. Sherry's annoyed because his cuffs are taking a while to unlock, but it's only because they're reinforced with mana. Luckily, they manage to break him free. The kid thinks he's grossly exaggerating. Their conversation comes to a full stop as one voice penetrates the scene, demanding them to stay still. This is Haman, and he's surprised they managed to pull off a big move like that. Seeing Siwoo bite the dust at the hands of these low-life criminals, Haman is now even more certain that he was right, that he isn't special, and that his guildmaster is wrong. Nevertheless, he isn't in the mood to let these criminals go. He questions their methods and goals, when suddenly the girl recognizes him as the A-rank hunter Haman from the White Lion Guild. She's surprised to discover they were followed. The old man confirms that no one else is nearby, which means Haman's ready to rumble on his own. He gets into position, once again questioning Sherry's identity. The maniacal criminal claims that there is no use in introduction since he's going to annihilate the hunter anyway. Then he casts the Beowulf skill, taking over a beastly transformation. Haman is shocked to find himself faced against a heteromorphic awakener. Sherry channels all his inner rage, activating Diamond Rampage as another skill to cover his body in incredible mana. Now, he's on a whole other level. Still, the beast finds itself on the defense when Haman starts striking him with incredible speed. At the same time, the hunter is worried because none of his strikes seem to be decisive enough to land a critical blow. The beast considers these punches nothing more than a bunch of massage services. As for the kid, the old man recommends they join in and end the fight because they can't risk reinforcements to arrive. The girl casts a powerful spell, imbuing mana in her hands. This is called the 10-headed viper, and now Haman has to deal with that too. He evades the snake, ridiculing it. But his words turn against him as the snakes restrain his body using a tracking skill. Now that he's stuck in one place, the beast gets its moment to shine, shoving a heavy blow against Haman's body and sending him down. Sherry looks down on the hunter for believing he was special for being privileged and brought up by a powerful kid. In reality, he sees Haman as not even a threat for the alley fights. Haman reminds them that they're talking shit while literally jumping him in a 3-on-1 situation. But Sherry just kicks him down on that too, stating that their group is just smarter than Haman. Anyway, the old man recommends they don't waste any more precious time, urging the beast to prepare his final attack. He looks down on Haman, questioning if he's got any last words for himself. Haman fully realizes that he's totally outclassed, and may be facing his demise. That is until one man defies the situation and saves him with his arrival. He's a little annoyed that Haman decided to forfeit the fight just like that. Siwoo is disappointed in his disciples' teachings. Siwoo is struggling more with the mechanics of his body cam instead of worrying about a 3-on-1 fight. The beast can't believe that Siwoo survived, not after he confirmed smashing the human's skull before exiting the vehicle. The old man confirms that he should have died, so this is just strange to witness. Haman roars, warning Siwoo and urging him to wait for support to arrive. However, Siwoo's pissed as hell that he was caught in the midst of a clustered shithole. His peaceful coffee was ruined on top of that. So, to repay them dearly, he's decided to deem them all criminals, worthy of being eliminated here and now. Min Siwoo, known as the Mad Dog and our Demon Lord Slayer, makes it clear to the three buffoons that their game is over. He directs his words at Chu Haman from the White Lion Guild, referring to him as Xiaolong's disciple, while emphasizing that Asura is not merely a skill designed for striking. As our hero gathers his power, the heteromorphic hunter, Grey Wolf of Bestia, lunges at him. However, before the werewolf can land a blow, he is pierced by the Asura skill. Chu Haman, watching closely, struggles to believe his eyes as he recognizes it as the very same skill that his master uses. Siwoo knocks the wolf aside and immediately follows up, mocking him by remarking that draining all the blood is necessary for tender meat. The old buffoon retaliates with a thunderwall strike, only to be startled as their opponent effortlessly evades the attack. Our hero acknowledges the old man's ability to double cast using some cursed tool, remarking that at least his life hasn't been entirely wasted. Meanwhile, his predator, which he calls a parasite, finds the skill unfamiliar and curiously wonders if it can be eaten. Siwoo explains that the skill functions much like an expensive one-time use scroll, requiring mana to be channeled into it for activation. Chu Haman, unable to hold back his curiosity, questions our hero about his identity and how he possesses knowledge of his master's skill. Before he can press further, the old man begins chanting dark spells, catching him off guard with a gravity spell and attempting to use him as bargaining leverage. Siwoo, immediately recognizing the old geezer's ploy, scoffs at the attempt, ridiculing him for stooping to mere threats. The old geezer reiterates his demand, insisting that if Siwoo wants Haman to stay alive, he should walk away. He goes on to add that our hero was merely dragged into the situation and that things can proceed smoothly if he simply leaves without causing trouble. Min Siwoo casually swirls a finger in his ear, dismissing the old man's words by pointing out that he wouldn't be here if he hadn't deliberately accepted such a filthy mission. He further remarks that Haemin should have no trouble handling a basic gravity spell like this, even if it doesn't seem that way at the moment. The old geezer questions our hero, pointing out the apparent contradiction and asking whether he and Haemin are truly on the same side. Siwoo responds by making it clear that the only ones siding here are them. He then exposes what he already knows, revealing that the old man is a hunter-killer working under the command of a powerful group. This revelation catches the old man off guard, leaving him stunned by how much Siwoo already knows. Without missing a beat, Siwoo continues laying out more facts about him before finally demanding to know who he is working for. The old man makes another attempt to threaten our hero, remarking that even with the knowledge of them being hunter-killers, Siwoo still chose to be here. Fixing him with a deathly stare, Siwoo simply repeats his question. As our hero closes the distance, the old man hastily draws a cursed tool and unleashes a shockwave spell, only to be caught off guard when it is effortlessly nullified. Confused, he wonders if Siwoo used some kind of lightning-based spell to overload the tool. Without hesitation, he jumps backward, trying to widen the gap between them. Predator remarks that the meal now looks even more appetizing. Suddenly, Siwoo's hand begins to glow, revealing that his form has been restored by 40%. Growing even stronger, he taunts the old man, telling him to stop wasting time since, at his age, he can't afford to squander the few days he has left. The old geezer refuses to comply. While acknowledging that Siwoo has uncovered his identity as a hunter-killer, he makes it clear that the organization he serves will remain a mystery. He explains that everyone working for them is bound by an oath of silence. The moment he breaks it and reveals their secrets, he will instantly become a target for immediate execution, ensuring his death either way. Meanwhile, Haemin rises to his feet, recovering from the effects of the gravity spell, just as the werewolf regains his senses and coughs up black blood. Without hesitation, our hero briskly moves toward the old man, asking if he is afraid of dying. As he speaks, he begins casting a spell, 3 magic circles appearing around him. Growing anxious, the old man turns to the Grey Wolf of Bestia, urgently demanding that he do something to stop Siwoo. The werewolf snaps at the old geezer, telling him to shut up, before engulfing himself in a purple aura and charging toward our hero, this time vowing to tear him apart. However, before he can cover much distance, he is intercepted by Haemin, who remarks that their numbers are finally even. The two exchange heated words, but their argument is abruptly cut short as our hero unleashes his Thousand Winds spell, blasting both the werewolf and the old geezer away. Without wasting a moment, Siwoo dashes toward the old man, seizing him by the neck with an iron grip and demanding to know if he truly understands what death feels like. Tightening his grip around the old geezer's throat, Siwoo demands to know how many times he must drag him to the brink of death before getting an answer. Watching from the side, Haemin finds it absurd that our hero keeps pushing these buffoons to the verge of death, only to heal them afterward. The thought crosses his mind that if he were in their position, he would rather die than endure such a fate. He even wonders how it's possible for someone to wield a healing spell so powerful. Siwoo repeats his question, and this time, the wolf pleads with the old man to give in and just answer. Finally giving in to the pressure, the old geezer speaks, revealing that they work for Bestia. As he takes a closer look at our hero, realization dawns on him. Siwoo is none other than one of the 3 legendary figures who vanished long ago, the infamous mad dog, Min Siwoo. Siwoo casually sits down, remarking that since they've finally decided to use their mouths, he'll need more information. Pulling out an image of the serpent-eyed, fang-toothed man responsible for Minjun's death, he demands to know the identity of the killer. As the scene shifts, glimpses of the assassination organization known as Bestia come into view. It was an elite group specializing in hunting down targets, operating under the command of a figure known as Crow. Over time, the organization expanded, growing in power and securing a significant influence in this world. The old geezer, having been among the first generation of hunters, once received an invitation from them and saw no reason to hesitate before quickly accepting their offer. For those recruited by the organization, secrecy was the highest priority. Even back then, when the old geezer was already aging, he was required to take the oath of silence. By signing it, he surrendered control over his own life and death to the assassination organization. As the scene shifts back, the old man reflects on his 15 years with Bestia, recalling how he had always believed he would never betray them. If the situation ever demanded it, he had resolved to bite off his tongue and die rather than break his oath. But after experiencing the agony of death over and over again, his resolve finally shattered, forcing him to finally give in and speak. The old man finally reveals that the person in question is also a member of his organization, known by the nickname Black Mamba. Our hero finds the name rather unpleasant, but quickly moves on to his main question. He asks both of them whether they have ever been involved in the assassination of a hunter named Young Minjun. When neither of them responds, an unsettling force washes over them, gripping them with an overwhelming sensation, as if their very skin is about to be peeled off. Baldy quickly speaks up, insisting that they have no knowledge of the matter. He explains that Bestia's operations are mostly independent, with members rarely needing to coordinate with one another. Before Siwoo can press further, he voluntarily continues, revealing that members typically remain unaware of each other's abilities or locations. However, due to the organization's biannual meeting, they were specifically assigned to retrieve the wolf from prison. He further discloses that the meeting is scheduled to take place in a week, and that their orders were to bring the wolf there. Realizing that their chapter has come to an end, the old geezer bows before Siwoo, pledging to share all the information he knows, including how to infiltrate the meeting. With desperation, he humbly requests that our hero accept them as his subordinates. Chu Haman flares up, calling the offer absurd. Turning to Siwoo, he addresses him as his brother, and asks if he would really fall for such a trick. Resting his head on his hand, our hero calmly questions when exactly Haman became his brother. Haman argues that since Siwoo can use Asura, he is at the very least his senior, perhaps even his mentor's mentor. Dropping the subject of the buffoons entirely, he earnestly requests that Siwoo take him as his disciple instead. Siwoo abruptly cuts Haman off, telling him to keep his mouth shut for a moment. He takes a pause to assess the situation. His only real objective is to gather information on the snake-eyed man, Black Mamba. He realizes that if he lets these two go, their own organization will likely eliminate them. And worse, news about him will reach Bestia, making things far more complicated. Weighing the pros and cons, he ultimately decides to take them both as his subordinates. This decision leaves Haman utterly shocked, while the old geezer, overjoyed, expresses his gratitude. However, before he can shower Siwoo with praise, they are immediately met with a condition. Siwoo lays down his condition, making it clear that to ensure their loyalty, they must take the ultimate oath called the Mana Oath. The weight of this demand quickly sinks in, prompting a complaint from the wolf. However, before he can protest further, the old geezer cuts him off, advising him to comply unless he wishes to experience death a dozen more times. With fear settling in, the two reluctantly gather their mana at their cores. Following our hero's command, they state their names. The old geezer introduces himself as Red Ghost, while the wolf identifies himself as Sherry Volk. As the two complete the contract with our hero, he assures them that as long as they remain loyal, they will be rewarded with protection, and their lives will be safeguarded. Watching Siwoo accept the criminals, Haman flails on the ground like a child, complaining that he was left out while they were taken in. Pouting, he threatens that if he is not made Siwoo's disciple, he will report everything to the association. Siwoo fixes him with a bloody stare before casually telling him he was just teasing. With that, he makes the scroll used for the oath disappear and finally grants Haman's request, accepting him as his disciple. Letting out a sigh of relief, he considers that having extra hands will be useful. This group should be enough to create the kind of scene he has in mind, though he realizes he might need one more person, someone he intends to use to clean up the mess that will follow. Back at the Hunter's police station, a fat, chubby officer is seen scolding the team leader of HMCS, Jonggu, demanding an explanation for how Sherry Volk managed to escape. He stresses how dangerous the man is, and goes on to argue that all the hype surrounding HMCS seems nothing more than a myth. Siwoo, lounging on a sofa, casually responds that Sherry was so fast he could not keep up. Jonggu, clearly disgusted, glares at him and demands that he at least put some effort into his excuse and take the matter seriously. The chubby officer continues his rant, demanding to know why the new transport officer has yet to arrive and calling the entire operation a mess. Having heard enough, Jonggu finally speaks up, explaining that a standard prisoner transport team consists of 4 to 5 officers, while moving a high-threat inmate requires up to 10. Admitting his own fault, he acknowledges that he specifically requested for just one officer to handle the transport. The chubby warden shoots up from his seat in anger, insisting that none of that matters since the prisoner still managed to escape. Jonggu, waving him off, points out that the new transport officer was actually able to make the escapee confess. He reveals that they learned Sherry Volk had been receiving help from high-ranking officers at the prison in exchange for bribes. Refusing to believe the story, the fat warden dismisses it as an obvious lie. Jonggu, remaining calm, acknowledges that the warden's skepticism is understandable, but insists that the matter is serious enough to warrant an immediate investigation. Speaking on behalf of HMCS, Jonggu states that they plan to conduct a thorough investigation into Incheon prison and the escapee. He then requests the warden's cooperation in the matter. As the scene shifts, Jonggu informs Siwoo that he has initiated the investigation and handled the other matters as requested. Present at the discussion are Hunter Chu-haman and the 2 buffoons, who are now Siwoo's disciples. Laying out his plan on the table, Siwoo tells the group that the time has come to begin their operation, an infiltration of Bestia's meeting. He reveals that around 8 top-ranked awakened killers will be attending. He then instructs Haman and Junggu to pay close attention as the 2 defectors provide the remaining details. Junggu, troubled by the plan, questions how they intend to infiltrate an entire assassination group with such a small team. He asks what their ultimate goal is in pulling off such a dangerous task. Giving him a smirk, Siwoo states that the goal is quite obvious, which is to exterminate every single one of them. At the next Bestia gathering, the leader mockingly jokes about the 2 who vanished. The group argues, claiming they knew the old man and Sherry Volk were cowards, but never saw their betrayal coming. Hedgehog, the goth girl, furiously swears to kill Volk for breaking her promise to go on a date. Scarmouth demands silence, stating only the boss punishes traitors. But the boss chuckles, amused by how fast 3 members disappeared. His presence instantly quiets the room before he announces a deathmatch, with the winner earning the right to execute the traitors. A heavy silence follows. Black Mamba bluntly tells the boss his jokes aren't amusing. He points out that killing the traitors is easy. The real issue is that their meeting place has been leaked. One member laughs at the idea that anyone would dare attack them, but the alarms blare before the words even settle. The group is stunned, yet the leader seems to enjoy the chaos. It turns out a single intruder is pushing through each of the 5 entrances. 5 members head off to intercept, while one throws a remark at Hedgehog and Black Mamba, wondering why they're still hanging around with the boss. Black Mamba mocks the intruders, dismissing them as trash, while Hedgehog remains lost in her comics. The 3 continue their casual exchange, completely unaware that our boy Junggu is creeping through the vents, his every movement laced with unease. Frustration bubbles inside him as he silently laments drawing the most dangerous job of the bunch. Shifting time half an hour earlier, the squad gathers outside the meeting spot, listening as the old man lays out the situation. The 5 entrances never stay the same, constantly shifting like a puzzle. One of them will make it inside first, but in the end, they'll all find their way to the target. Our hero decides they should each take an entrance, cutting off any escape route for the Bestia members. Without hesitation, he instructs Junggu to hand out the radios, making it clear that if anyone struggles against their opponent, especially Black Mamba, they should stall and call for backup. Once inside, Junggu finds himself at a dead end. His eyes land on a vent overhead, and without a second thought, he jumps straight into it, slipping past every layer of security laid by the organization. But before he knows it, he lands right in the chamber of killers. With 5 members already gone, there's no time to reach out for reinforcements. Determined to cut down their numbers, he pulls a handful of marbles from his pocket and casually lets one drop. The leader scoffs, turning to Hedgehog with a smirk, joking that she must have lost it from their slot machine. As she picks it up, the goth girl playfully comments that she just hit the jackpot. And she's right. The marble erupts like dynamite, sending shockwaves through the room. The leader, unfazed, simply chuckles at her demise. Black Mamba shoots up from his seat, instantly spotting the incoming grenade. With precision, he effortlessly flicks it straight toward the vent, sending it right back. Now that there's no point in hiding, Junggu springs from his hiding spot, making a grand entrance. Dripping with sweat, he curses himself being able to take down only one, still shocked at how Black Mamba casually slapped away the grenade like it was nothing. No special technique, just physical prowess. Snake Guy facepalms, fed up with the traitors who sold them out to HMCS. When Junggu confirms it, he can't help but shake his head, almost feeling sorry for the fools who betrayed Bestia for such a pathetic deal. Wasting no time, Junggu conjures a dazzling burst of light, momentarily blinding his opponent as he hurls daggers concealed within the flash. Across the room, the leader sips her tea, enjoying it like a children's fight. Black Mamba, on the other hand, laughs, already familiar with Junggu's tricks. But what leaves Junggu stunned is the sight of the Snake Man's body knitting itself back together, raw mana fueling his insane regeneration like it's nothing. Calling playtime over, the snake charges, smashing our boy into the wall with one brutal strike. Mamba sighs, annoyed he hit the vitals too soon, and asks the boss if he can finish the job with a mess. But our boy acts fast, whipping out his radio and reporting before words are cut off by a boot to the chest. Stomping on his chest, the Snake Guy asks if the backup is the HMCS, Traitors, or Wolf Boy. But before Junggu can respond, the answer crashes in from behind. The trio storms the meeting hall all at once, catching everyone off guard as the real fight begins. Without even glancing back, Mamba effortlessly dodges the trio's attack, leaving nothing but a crater where he once stood. Snake Guy eyes the intruders, muttering how disappointed the boss must be, seeing her chosen ones turn out so weak. But something doesn't sit right with him. He notices the trio looks almost untouched, their movements too smooth for people who supposedly fought against Tiger and Grizzly. Their slow attacks are easily avoided, raising doubts in his mind. Haman steps up to meet Mamba in close combat, But before he can land a hit, Mamba snatches him up in a deadly grip. Tossing him away, he grins while asking what a white lion hunter is doing with the HMCS. Watching the trio struggle, Snake Man grows even more suspicious. There's no way a patched-together team formed just a day ago could have wounded Bestia so easily. His eyes narrow as he wonders who's really pulling the strings. Frustrated, Haman barks at Jonggu to get up, reminding him they rushed in the second they could. He explains that Siwoo suddenly appeared during their fights and ordered them straight to the hall. With no other choice, the trio keeps stalling, buying time until our hero arrives to finish the job. Folk grits his teeth, confused about how they're supposed to capture a monster like Black Mamba alive. The old man notes that the hall is rigged, pointing out that despite Mamba's incredible speed, teleportation isn't one of his tricks. His unease grows as he watches the leader silently observing the battle. The real danger lies with Crow. Once the leader makes a move, anything could happen. With that in mind, the old man instructs them to focus on capturing Mamba while he keeps an eye on the leader. Meanwhile, Snake Guy grows irritated, dodging Haman and Wolf Boy's relentless attacks. His frustration spikes as everyone keeps ignoring his question. Baldy's voice suddenly booms through the hall, declaring that no one is leaving until our hero arrives. Red chains of mana shoot up from the ground, latching onto Haman and even Bestia's leader Crow. The boss chuckles, calling the old man's efforts a waste of time. But the old man remains unfazed, fully confident in his binding spell. A dangerous aura radiates from Crow as he questions just how powerful their mastermind must be to betray him so boldly. Without hesitation, he calls for Hedgehog. From the shadows, she strikes with her spiky hair, diving straight at the old man. Volk and Jonggu race to defend him, stunned that she's still alive. Growing tired of the delay, Mamba shatters the binding skill and activates his skill, saying they are gonna be quite busy cleaning up the mess. Mamba's scales turn white, mutating into a white-scaled lizard man as he promises to end their lives quickly. Jonggu and Haman, knowing no attack will pierce the thick scales, prepare to run for their lives. Jonggu ponders Mamba's transformation, though it appears similar to Wolf Boy's. The mana is denser than diamond. With the rigged meeting hall, only he can hold out against the recipe for disaster. He judges it impossible to aid Volk and the old man against Hedgehog. Helping in the only way the weak guy can, he throws a dagger into Mamba's arm. Before the lizardman can take it out, it grows green, indicating a corrosion skill. Jonggu continues his barrage of daggers before being blown away. Haman warns him of the flying boulder headed his way, but Mamba quickly reminds him not to look away in a fight. The monster teleports behind Jonggu, warning that innocent hunters have gravely misunderstood the situation. With a firm chokehold, the lizard man points out that skill ranks and mana numbers mean nothing in a dirty fight. He declares it a mistake to challenge them on their turf. Meanwhile, our hedgehog is busy exacting revenge on the lying Volk. The meeting hall is equipped with various self-destructing and buffing mechanisms for the Bestia members. It's no wonder they call it the Snake's Den. Anyone who enters is never leaving alive. Mamba tells Jonggu to give up his frivolous effort, nearly knocking our boy out, when he suddenly senses an ominous aura. Crow immediately leaps backward as our hero flies by his buddy Jonggu and slams the ugly lizard into the den's wall. Our Demon Lord Slayer grins like a demon, having finally found Minjun's killer. Meanwhile, Hedgehog has already taken down the wolf guy and now shifts her attention to Siwoo, curiosity sparking as she seeks to uncover his identity. However, before she can take any action, a magic circle suddenly activates, striking her down in an instant. Observing the unexpected turn of events, Crow, the leader of the group, finds herself intrigued, wondering how Siwoo managed to dismantle and repurpose every magic circle embedded within the space. Unseen and unheard by anyone but Siwoo, Predator Frey takes the opportunity to boast, claiming that such a feat was only achievable due to his power. Crow observes the scene with amusement, remarking on how effortlessly Siwoo has reduced a billion-costing facility to nothing more than scrap. Meanwhile, Black Mamba recovers from his injury and swiftly casts a spell, only for Siwoo to evade it by leaping backward. Recognizing the situation, Black Mamba begins to piece things together, questioning whether Siwoo is the one responsible for eliminating the old geezer and the wolf guy, as well as orchestrating the entire operation. Siwoo still holds on to the anger that surged through him upon learning of his subordinate's death, directing his accusation at Black Mamba as the true culprit. From a distance, Crow, observing the situation, questions what Mamba could have done to provoke such fury. Black Mamba, unfazed, claims that he merely follows the orders and requests assigned to him, insisting that he bears no guilt beyond that. He continues, voicing his curiosity, attempting to confirm his suspicion by asking whether Siwoo has come seeking revenge. Puzzled, he wonders how Siwoo managed to uncover his identity, considering he never leaves behind any trace. Siwoo forms a thunder circle in his hand, making it clear that he intends to take his revenge, though there is something he needs to uncover first. Meanwhile, Crow finds herself backed into a corner by the others. Raising her hands, she directs her curiosity toward her former crew members, questioning what could have possibly happened to turn them into Siwoo's obedient followers so suddenly. As this unfolds, the Thunder Circle Siwoo has been casting finally reaches completion, revealing that he has successfully reversed buff-enhancing magic into traps instead. Black Mamba, struggling against the suppressing trap, tries to piece together Siwoo's abilities, wondering whether he is a tracking-type magic user or a melee hunter. Yet, none of the possibilities he considers seem to fully align with what he has witnessed. Before he can dwell on it further, Siwoo unleashes another skill, slamming him against the wall once more and forcing him to revert to his hunter form. Bleeding from his mouth, Black Mamba swears that he has never seen Siwoo before. Despite taking pride in knowing everything about high-ranking hunters, he finds himself at a complete loss regarding his opponent's identity. Without wasting any time, he casts another magic circle and demands to know what business Siwoo has with him. Before Black Mamba can finish his enchantment, Siwoo appears above him in an instant, driving him to the ground with his foot. Making it clear that he is the one who will be asking the questions, not the other way around, he presses down harder, forcing his dominance over the situation. Without giving him a chance to recover, Siwoo slams him down again, issuing a sharp warning that a single wrong move will cost him his life, leaving no room for defiance. Black Mamba, now completely overpowered, visibly gives up and pleads for Siwoo to stop, his will to resist breaking. Seeing that Black Mamba is finally willing to talk, Siwoo wastes no time and demands to know who ordered the assassination of Young Minjun. As sweat drips down his face, Black Mamba's mind races, questioning how Siwoo even learned about the murder and whether he has some connection to the victim. Instead of answering, he resorts to a cheap trick, pretending to comply just long enough to lower Siwoo's guard. Seizing the moment, he suddenly spits a venomous poison from his mouth, aiming to catch his opponent off guard. Believing he has taken down Siwoo, Black Mamba boasts that a true assassin never reveals his client. However, his confidence shatters the moment Siwoo instantly recovers, healing himself without effort. Panic overtakes him as he struggles to understand if Siwoo is actually a healer. Desperate, he turns to Crow for help, only to find her completely surrounded by Siwoo's disciples, leaving him with no way out. With no other options, Black Mamba finally gives in, beginning to reveal the client's name, Panday. But before he can finish, Crow swiftly eliminates him. Watching this unfold, Siwoo contemplates whether the name he was about to say was Pandemonium. Hearing this, Crow finally acknowledges that she has realized Siwoo's true identity, none other than the legendary first-generation hunter, Mad Dog, who mysteriously disappeared a decade ago. Siwoo, now turning his attention to Crow, questions whether she is also affiliated with Pandemonium. However, she firmly denies the accusation, asserting that her organization operates strictly as an assassin's guild and does not engage in personal requests. Siwoo fixes Crow with a death glare, making it clear that speaking the truth is the only option if she knows what's best for her. Crow, maintaining her stance, swears that she has no reason to lie, pointing out that Siwoo already has information on her. With a snap of her fingers, she signals Hedgehog to get up and assist in their escape. In an instant, the two vanish into the sky, preparing to flee. Before leaving, Crow questions whether Siwoo intends to pursue her, but he dismisses the idea, stating that he has already obtained the lead he was after, leaving him with no further reason to chase them. As the portal materializes, Crow bids farewell to Siwoo, hinting that their paths may cross again soon before vanishing into thin air. Jonggu, frustrated, complains to Siwoo about letting them escape, only to be met with a calm explanation. Siwoo informs him that had he pursued them, Crow would have activated the floor's self-destruction sequence, something they were in no condition to evade. He then instructs Jonggu to handle the cleanup, stating that they have achieved enough for the day. As the scene shifts, Siwoo is in his room, searching for more information on Pandemonium. His mind drifts back 20 years to the moment when the first gate appeared, unleashing all manner of things upon the world. Mana surged into existence, magic stones surfaced, and countless rare resources were discovered. Demons too emerged through the gate, initially blending into society unnoticed. However, they did not stop there. Not only did they seize control over the gates, but they also regarded humans as an inferior species. Before long, they successfully established their headquarters, constructing the Demon King's castle at the heart of the continent, securing their grip over all the resources pouring from the gates. Amidst this chaos, a faction of humans emerged, swearing loyalty to the Demon King. They became known as Pandemonium, serving as the bridge between demons and humans. However, fortune favored humanity as the first-generation hunters rose to oppose them. These hunters swiftly mastered mana manipulation, standing as the last line of defense against Pandemonium's growing influence. What followed was the Great War between humans and demons, a brutal conflict that shook the world. In the end, humanity triumphed, pushing the demons back. Siwoo recalls that it has now been 10 years since he single-handedly defeated the 4 demon lords, only to be cast into a dimensional rift, ultimately finding himself trapped in the demon world. He questions why the name Pandemonium is resurfacing after all this time, especially since the group was dismantled long before the war even began. His thoughts turn to his predator, seeking answers about why the demons in the other world seemed so different. Frey acknowledges the difference and shares his own analysis, revealing that numerous races exist across the dimensions. He notes that the demons in the other world were particularly ruthless, having gone so far as to exploit the dragon species, forcing them into servitude. Frey continues, arguing that no matter where demons go, they behave like gangsters. Before becoming a part of our hero, he had no memories, only a lingering sense that something had been stolen from him by the demons. Having spent over 100 years at Siwoo's side, analyzing demons, he is now certain that they were the ones who tampered with his memory. Siwoo places a hand on his head, reflecting that instead of solely focusing on killing them, he should have paid more attention to uncovering their true nature. Siwoo notices that the mana patterns of demons differ from those of humans, and compared to 10 years ago, they have become far more adept at blending in. Frey suggests that simply eliminating them would solve everything, but Siwoo admits that he wishes it were that simple. Just then, his younger brother enters, questioning why he suddenly asked him to rent an office, suspecting that he might have gotten himself into trouble. Siwoo, remaining casual, responds that it's nothing major. He's just trying to track down Minjun's traces. Sejun points out that from what he has gathered, Siwoo recently wiped out an entire assassination organization, and questions whether his request for an office was meant for planning that mission. Taking a seat on the sofa, Sejun scolds him, reminding him that he has repeatedly urged him to keep a low profile, warning that it wouldn't be ideal if the president found out. Siwoo, letting out a sigh, reassures his brother not to worry, explaining that Junggu has already erased all records of his involvement. Siwoo also mentions that he is planning to visit President Choi Dae-soo soon. However, his brother finds this decision unwise. Frustrated by Siwoo's actions, Guildmaster Sejun argues that he has yet to regain his full mana strength. While he won't force him to stop, he insists that he shouldn't rush into things. He expresses concern that Siwoo might end up in trouble again, reminding him that the world has changed significantly over the past 10 years. Siwoo appears before his brother, scratching his head like a monkey, telling him not to overwork his little brain. Sejun lets it go, reminding Siwoo to keep his promise and stay safe, as he can't afford to lose him again. Changing the subject, he asks if Siwoo remembers Hunter Shin Jisoo, mentioning that her awakening skill turned out to be quite impressive. He suggests that his brother should look into her. Siwoo, however, shifts the topic, saying that he's hungry and inviting Sejun to join him for dinner. Frey chimes in as well, complaining that he's starving since Siwoo's mana isn't enough to satisfy him. In response, Siwoo mockingly blames his predator for his own hunger. As Sejun leaves, he calls Junggu, complaining about why he revealed everything to his brother. However, the big guy scolds him instead, reminding him of the chaos it caused trying to cover up his actions in front of HMCS. Every media outlet and agency is swarming the organization with interviews after the takedown of the assassins. He further informs Siwoo that, thanks to keeping his name out of it, the branch manager is now closely monitoring them. Siwoo argues that it's a good thing since it means he's getting results, but Junggu, clearly frustrated, complains that the real issue is figuring out how to justify the fact that he single-handedly took down such high-ranked A+ hunters. Our hero counters that Junggu should have involved the White Lion Guild since Haman was present, but Junggu still insists that Siwoo stepping forward would help ease the burden on them. Siwoo then hangs up, dismissing the matter by saying his meal is waiting. Heading to the kitchen, he settles onto the sofa, murmuring to himself about how much he enjoys his job. Turning his head back, he casually asks his brother if there's any recent news regarding the demons. Sejun explains that ever since Siwoo eliminated the 4 demon lords, the demons had no choice but to propose a peace treaty and establish an institute in the polar continent to study the mana that emerged on Earth. He adds that some nations have even begun collaborating with them on this research, and it has become rare to see demons outside the polar continent. Over time, people have largely dismissed the chaos they once caused, reducing it to nothing more than an urban legend. Frey finds it rather absurd and questions when demons ever became peace-loving beings. Siwoo then shifts the conversation to Crow, mentioning that while her mana pattern closely resembled that of a demon, there was something off about it. This leads him to suspect that she might be a demon-human hybrid. Given that demons first appeared on Earth 20 years ago, he is convinced that such a possibility exists. What initially began as a mission to avenge Minjun's death has now transformed into something far more complex, leaving him with the feeling that this pursuit might continue for a long time. Back at Siwoo's place, he begins training his 2 new subordinates to control their mana by helping them discover their mana core. Confused, Hamin questions how this could be useful when skills only awaken in high adrenaline battles. Annoyed, Siwoo smacks Wolfboy, reminding him that they were the ones who asked for training in the first place. He sighs at their naive belief that simply blasting out mana like a gym workout is the best way to use it. The simple-minded Volk, on the other hand, argues that there's no need for control if they can just take down their enemies in a single hit. Siwoo points out that the easy tutorial tower has spoiled them, making them overly reliant on brute force. He explains that sensing one's mana core requires precise control, something his new disciples clearly lack. Using an analogy, he describes how every person has an internal space where mana gathers, often referred to as the dantian or core. Each individual awakens with a unique trait, releasing mana in a way that manifests as skills. The more refined their control over the power flowing from their core, the stronger their abilities become. That's why training is essential, not just to expand their mana reserves, but also to enhance the effectiveness of their skills. Siwoo, acting like an old man, mocks the three for only using their power for around 20 years. He tells them to stop complaining and just follow his instructions if they truly want to get stronger. As if that isn't enough, he warns them about the grueling training the Bestia traders will undergo until they've properly atoned for their crimes. Suddenly, a visibly distressed Junggu arrives, demanding to know why Siwoo didn't answer his phone. The Mad Dog casually responds that he doesn't pick up calls 24/7. Ignoring the remark, Junggu stresses that he needs to meet the branch director at HQ immediately. At the HMCS office, Siwoo eyes Junggu suspiciously, asking if he snitched on him to his superiors. Junggu adamantly denies it, but before he can say more, they're approached by two of his sassy colleagues. The Gangnam team leader and his lackey start teasing Junggu about his sudden rise to fame. Seeing Changwon back from his vacation, Junggu clicks his tongue and tells him to quit slacking off and actually do his job instead of bothering his coworkers. Ignoring the bickering, the Gangnam team leader turns his attention to Siwoo, but our hero couldn't be less interested. Instead, he casually picks his ear, completely unfazed. Junggu steps in, sighing that jet lag must be making the Gangnam turd spout nonsense. Changwon's aide fires back with a nerdy comeback, and Changwon starts rambling about how everyone is just jealous that his team is making waves internationally, while the Gangbuk team is stuck dealing with petty thugs. Siwoo, busy scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledges the conversation, until the nerd pointedly reminds him to show some respect and introduce himself to his seniors. Without missing a beat, our hero flips him off and tells him to clear the precious space his leader is hogging with those fake, roided-up muscles. To top it off, he glances at the aide's glasses and smirks, asking if Four Eyes is blind even with his edgy frames. The nerd twitches in anger and immediately requests permission to discipline the newbie. But Junggu, ever the voice of reason, sighs and asks if Four Eyes has any emotional intelligence at all. Changwon, not one to let things slide, scoffs and asks if Junggu is deaf since he clearly didn't hear Siwoo trash-talking his seniors. Loyal as ever, Junggu blatantly denies it, while our hero grins and quips that maybe the orc has too much fat clogging his ears. That's the last straw. With his rage overflowing, Changwon cracks his knuckles and declares in front of the entire office that it's time to teach these punks a lesson and show everyone who's really in charge. Just then, the boss shows up. Branch Director Jianho materializes out of nowhere, jump-scaring the living daylights out of the Gangnam team. Completely ignoring them, he turns to our duo with a warm smile, greeting them and apologizing for the delay caused by the dimwits. Without wasting time, Jianho personally escorts his esteemed guests away, even going as far as asking what kind of tea they prefer. Fuming, Changwon tries to complain, but before he can even get a word out, the boss cuts him off with a casual reminder of his utter failure in the Japan mission. That shuts the Gangnam turds up instantly. Burning with jealousy, the two are left speechless, their minds racing as they try to figure out just what kind of insane connections this rookie must have. Inside the director's office, Junggu remains on edge while Siwoo, unfazed, gets straight to the point about the reason behind his summons. Amused by his blunt approach, the director responds with a laugh, shifting the conversation toward the Incheon prison escort. He points out that, following the success of the Bestia raid, responsibility for the escort case has now fallen under their branch's jurisdiction. With a broad smile, he wastes no time in addressing the real matter at hand, directly questioning what exactly transpired with the escaped prisoner. His skepticism is evident, making it clear that he finds it hard to believe someone capable of taking down the infamous Gert would genuinely lose to a mere wolf boy. Observing Siwoo's reluctance to provide an answer, he promptly instructs Junggu to step out, ensuring their discussion remains private. The director reiterates that he considers himself a reasonable man. While Junggu has an impressive track record, the reality remains that he lacks the capability to single-handedly raid and dismantle an assassin's guild like Bestia. Drawing from his experience, he pieces together that the escaped prisoner likely provided them with a lead to the organization. He points out that officially reporting this information would be advantageous for everyone involved. However, simply disregarding a wanted hunter isn't an option, especially not just because a rookie insists on it. Realizing that his line of questioning is leading nowhere, the director shifts tactics, revealing that he has invited a mutual acquaintance, one who is quite eager to have a conversation with Siwoo. His curiosity finally piqued. Siwoo turns his head to face none other than one of his fellow first-generation legendary hunters, the Guildmaster of Fighting Warrior, Du Kangho. At Kangho's residence, the two enjoy a peaceful conversation over a cup of tea, just like the good old times. Uncle Kangho recalls how shocked he was when he first heard the news of our hero's death. Curious, Predator asks who the suspicious old guy acting so familiar with him is. Our hero also notes that the man seems to have aged quite a bit. Laughing at the odd comment, Kangho chuckles and points out that Siwoo is the one who seems frozen in time. The uncle, with a touch of jealousy, mentions how Siwoo hasn't gained a single wrinkle over the past 10 years. He then asks what happened, since even his disciples went through hell yet couldn't track him down. Acting nonchalant, our boy replies they'll need another drink since his story isn't a short one. Hearing his 100-year-long tale, the uncle finds it impressive how much he went through. Our Demon Kingslayer shares his worry that mysterious dimensional magic activated at the very end of the fourth boss's fight. Clearing up the confusion, Kangho reveals that the fourth Demon King is still alive, leaving Siwoo stunned. My guy slams the table, seething with rage that the humans signed the peace treaty despite knowing this. Kangho does his best to calm him, explaining that only the remnants of the Demon Lord's forces remain. After the Demon Slayer ended his reign, the demons on Earth claimed they were merely following orders from their leader in the war against humans. Siwoo grits his teeth, realizing they had used him as a scapegoat. But Kangho calls it a necessary evil, given that human resources had been stretched thin since the first gate appeared. When the demons offered the peacefire, they even promised to share their knowledge on how to seal the gates. It was an irrefutable offer, so the humans exchanged the Demon King's remnants and a lab in the Arctic, where they could safely open a gate. For the people who were unaware of magic and the gates, it was undoubtedly the best choice for progress. As a result, top rankers like Choi Dae-soo from every country took the deal. Since then, the demons have stayed under the radar. He mentions that the first-gen hunters were initially very suspicious, but after Siwoo's disappearance, they scattered. Once everything calmed down, the interest in demons had waned. Kangho has had his doubts about the demons ever since, but what's even more intriguing is the disappearance of the mad dog. After Siwoo vanished, Choi Dae-soo went to great lengths to erase all traces of him, leaving no one beyond the second-gen hunters even aware of our Demon Slayer. What's even stranger is that the uncle couldn't recognize him today, despite having fought alongside him multiple times. Hearing how unnatural the memory loss is, our hero suggests that maybe Dae-soo had the demons' help. Kangho agrees, commenting that Siwoo has long been a pain in both parties' sides. Our hero then wonders aloud what the demons would have to gain from helping such a prideful jerk like Dae-soo erase his existence. Kangho reminds him that the demons have become harder to challenge since they've even helped humans improve with mana. Siwoo counters, pointing out that these are the same trash who started a war because they believed humans were an inferior race. With that, Kangho suggests that Siwoo meets with his disciples next to get a clearer picture. The problem is that his disciples have scattered across the world. But the uncle responds that although kids are like that, Yohwa is still in Korea. She's now an S rank and the leader of the Azure Flower Guild. Still, Uncle Kangho is disturbed to share that the same redhead who always clung to him like glue now works under Dae-soo. Our hero brushes it off, saying everyone has their reasons. After sharing a good laugh over the pricey yet nasty-tasting liquor, the uncle mentions his little brother. Siwoo replies that his little bro loves the old man, and thanks the samurai uncle for raising Sejun like his own son. Just then, a spy snaps a photo of the two from outside and sends it to his guildmaster. He confirms that he's caught the HMCS privately meeting with the great Kangho. The guildmaster, Yohwa, thanks him and confirms that Siwoo is alive, just as she had expected. Her suspicions had grown after seeing the Empire Guild's unusually chaotic movements. Breathing a sigh of relief, the lady goes weak in the knees, bursting into tears at the sight of the master she had terribly missed. After she started working under Dae-soo, Sejun lost trust in her, but the lady never stopped searching, even when everyone else had given up. Yohwa stares at the master, who hasn't changed a bit, and prepares to meet him immediately. Yet her hope comes crashing down when she hears someone call her name. Dae-soo asks why she's in such a rush. The redhead lady replies that it's nothing special, trying to steady her trembling arm. The creepy man grips her shoulder, pointing out that the cold-hearted woman who wasn't fazed by her mother's death can't possibly be so moved over something trivial. He guesses that he's heard of a certain infamous Min Siwoo's return, and her frozen expression gives it away. The eye-patch uncle sighs, watching her rush off to her master like a loyal pet. Patting her head, he clicks his tongue, muttering that she hasn't matured at all. He makes it clear he doesn't plan on letting her go easily, even if she's his last blood relative. She slaps his hand away, reminding him that she never pledged loyalty to him in the first place, and he knows it. He admits that he only let her linger around his guild because she grew into a powerful hunter. Yowa is furious hearing him refer to her as a mere tool. The redhead snaps at her supposed uncle, who abandoned her when she needed him most. Only Siwoo had been there to save her from despair. Daesu shatters her confidence by reminding her that she's a criminal. Given how our hero has been viciously hunting down criminals, once he finds out about her past, her so-called happy reunion won't be as pleasant as she hopes. The creepy uncle advises her not to forget her dirty roots and urges her to wake up from her delusion. The trembling lady is left completely demoralized, standing there utterly speechless. Meanwhile, at the guild, a pair of rookies meet our hero, who has promised to train them firsthand. Jisoo curiously asks if the huffing bear mask and the bald old man are also coming along. Our hero introduces the two seniors, while the wolf boy is suffocating in the bear mask, struggling to hide his identity. The juniors are immediately intimidated by the old man's menacing presence, yet the baldy casually remarks that he'll be relying on the energetic young ones. He offers her words of encouragement to Jisoo as though she's his own granddaughter. Siwoo reminds the troublemaker wolf boy that he's still on probation, warning him not to bully the juniors unless he wants to experience death again. With that, the team sets off toward the F-rank gate owned by the Empire Guild. Jisoo admits she's feeling quite nervous, so our hero tells her to think of the giant portal as just another door. The other recruit, equally hesitant, mentions a rumor that sometimes the gates swallow hunters if they close while the hunters are still inside. The old man reassures them, stating that humans now know exactly how to open and close the gates. He continues, explaining that gates have become a business due to the precious resources monsters inside yield. Cowards won't be rewarded without taking some risks. Once inside the gate, the team finds themselves in a lush forest. The recruits start complaining, leaving our hero wondering if all the kids are this clueless, even after graduating from the Hunter Academy. Bear Boy explains that after completing their studies, recruits are ranked after finishing the tutorial tower and only gain practical experience once they join a guild. Siwoo expresses his concern, calling the F-rank training little more than a system for mass-producing weaklings. He urges them to demonstrate their skills before they start facing monsters. Sent by Sejun, the pretend recruit feels humiliated, being bossed around by a stranger alongside a girl who can't even use her power properly. Finally charging up her skill, Jisoo is knocked back by the force of her own attack, landing on her butt. Hearing her rampant apologies, our trainer tells her to stop with the apologies and hands her a whip. The recruit looks confused, so he explains that it will help her better control her unique skill. Jisoo tries again, charging up her spell with the whip in hand. Meanwhile, the pretend recruit reports the gang of goblins ambushing them. Sitting at a safe distance, our trainer instructs him to handle it on his own. The guy curses at Siwoo's smug comment that they wouldn't learn anything if he beat the goblins for them. Watching the newbie in action, the baldy is impressed by his flashy tracking skill. However, it's clear that Byunguk's control is abysmal, and he's burning through his mana at an alarming rate. Meanwhile, the recruit is shocked at how fighting a swarm of goblins alone feels like pure punishment for someone at his level. In a panic, he shouts at Jisoo, asking how much longer she'll take. Completely drained of mana, he collapses, and a goblin almost lands a fatal blow. Just in time, Jisoo unleashes her skill, forcing the goblin to submit. With a single command, she makes it back off and copies her movements. Wolf Boy and Baldy are impressed, witnessing a rare domination skill in action. Even Frey, unable to contain his excitement, begs for permission to feast on such a rare sight. However, the mad dog remains unimpressed, remarking that it's quite useless if she can only control a single enemy. Realizing she's in deep trouble, the newbie starts desperately jolting her unconscious partner, while the goblins drool, eyeing the easy prey before them. Siwoo's assistance has helped her unlock a sense of how to use her techniques better, and she's grateful for that. Our boy doesn't even care that she looks like shit, as this is the only kind of mentoring he is willing to offer. Her hair disheveled, she cracks up a smile, stating that she was the foolish one for being overconfident. Believing that hunters and awakeners in general were special, and that their value increased in society with their ranks. But now, she was able to catch a hint of the true reality. Skills were tools, and not something a person could define their worth with. That's why training is important. Siwoo agrees, and thinks it's good enough if she's learned something. He's done for today and wants to head back home. The old man suddenly notes that there's a huge crowd spiraling up and wonders if these guys are from another guild. The girl explains that there is negotiation going on between the Azure Flower Guild and another group. A new gate has been discovered after all, so these people are just being dispatched here. Hearing the guild's name, Siwoo draws away for a second. From among the crowd, the people are curious to ask the guild leader about the appearance of the unique gate, as well as the pile of dead bodies of hunters that were discovered inside. The strange thing about this case is that these hunters weren't even torn apart by monsters. Their bodies seemed in one piece on the outside, but their organs had taken all the damage. It made Yowa contemplate what could become the catalyst for such a strange turn of events. Her train of thought is disrupted as a voice draws her over from her shoulder. It's Siwoo, who greets her with confidence, reminding her that her teacher is back. Seeing him here, she shows a different side to herself, mentioning his return. Siwoo wants to speak to her, but she's too busy and has things to deal with. Yohwa escapes the situation, while Frey is out here flaming our boy for being the first dude to get rejected at the speed of light. The old man finds her rude for dismissing him like that too. Siwoo confirms that to be the case, but it's not that she was rude just now. In fact, he saw her in a fragile state, as if she was crying, and he doesn't know why. Let's explore their backstory a bit. Siwoo came to see her while she was hiding and crying her eyes out. He doesn't even get what's causing her to be upset. The teacher emphasized that he'll always find her out even if she hides. Turns out, the girl was jealous as hell that Sejun was trained better than her because of his connection to his brother, while she was just a nobody he picked up. She was once starving on the streets, so he collected her just like how Batman collects a new Robin every week. Anyway, Yohwa doesn't get why Siwoo has been so nice and considerate of her despite having zero reason to do so. He teases her intently, stating that it's just a choice he made. He'd already been born into a tragic world, and felt that it was right to have a loving family of his own. He even gives Yohwa the privilege of being called his real sister all the same. To this, the redhead flushes and continues to put up a petty fight. Siwoo is a little annoyed and wonders if he should make her cry even harder in their next training session. Yohwa doesn't want him to adjust the difficulty of the training even further, since he already puts her through the worst every day. Those scenes race inside her head. She recalls never wanting to be the best disciple, but someone who could become his weapon, someone he could rely on. And that's how she ended up catching feelings for him. Tough luck. Yohwa could not escape the bubble of being the child of a disgusting criminal. She enjoyed her privileges as a child and thinks that it does not earn her any excuse. That's why Yohwa is prepared to do anything to fight for her teacher, for the person who helped restart her life. Yohwa pops a surprise visit to meet Sejun, who calls her his sister out of habit and then addresses her properly. The redhead wants him to spare the pleasantries for a moment because she's come here to talk. Let's hop over to a different scene, where Kang-ho is expressing his reasons of distrust to an acquaintance. When the gates first appeared, they had been fighting against demons. It was a barbaric era where powerful awakened warriors did not know what to make of their powers and broke every law. And now, he's seriously annoyed that this guy ended up making deals with the demons themselves. Eyepatch over here quickly realizes that Kang-ho's already encountered Siwoo, which is why he's so alert and suspicious of him right now. He thinks Siwoo's the one who has had his senses tamed, failing his judgment. Of course, this all seems like bullshit coming from President Eyepatch over here. He thinks the same of Kang-ho, claiming that he and the rest have some kind of delusion about him. This man outlines that he doesn't care about the safety or protection of humanity. The three reverences matter nothing to him. The bastard reveals his true nature. He's just a madman who is drunk on power, hoping to achieve complete supremacy. He wants to test and expire the very limits of mana and where that could lead humanity. His goal is to face an endless amount of strong opponents to help evolve humanity to greater heights. His authority is just a tool that helps him get there. The deals he made were merely because their interests aligned in one place. In the global domain, he confirms that each world leader had already bargained with the demons. On the exterior, it seems like they're forming these deals out of the country's safety, but they have their own agendas. With the current trajectory, humanity will tremendously evolve in the upcoming decade. He mocks Kang-ho for questioning his decisions when it only helped strengthen humanity's side. Kang-ho returns to the important question at hand. He wants to hear it from the man himself, to see if he truly made a deal with the demons and became the one responsible for sending Siwoo away. The president plays it soft, expressing that he's got nothing to hide, and if Siwoo has returned, then he's just gotten himself another chance to destroy him. Dae-soo is all confident in his shit-talk session until the man himself arrives to meet with him, stating that he's got a couple of things to ask too. He crashes right through the window, quick as lightning, and casually mentions how long it's been. Dae-soo is stunned to see the guy actually daring to confront him. Stepping inside, our hero jokes about how Dae-soo lives up high but can't be bothered with all the hassle of the front gate. He decides to cut to the chase before Dae-soo's annoying bodyguards show up. He straight up asks Dae-soo if he teamed up with Pandemonium and sent him to some other world 10 years back. Dae-soo, totally unfazed, just teases him, asking if that's all he has to say after such a flashy arrival. He even mocks him for being boring now. Frustrated, the hero threatens to flip the whole building over and demands that Dae-soo answer him. Dae-soo laughs, saying Siwoo's arrogance hasn't changed one bit. Even after 10 years, he still looks the same, like he had a great time in the other world. Then he asks what made him break in through the window. Suddenly, Siwoo grabs a pot of plants and hurls it at Dae-soo, scratching his cheek. Angrily, he threatens to tear himself apart and scatter his bits across dimensions. Siwoo warns Dae-soo to value his life and get to the point. He repeats the question about whether Dae-soo teamed up with the garbage organization Pandemonium or had anything to do with Young Minjun's death. He warns Daesu that if he messes with Yowa or his disciples, it'll be the end for him. But Daesu just smirks and laughs, saying this is what he wanted to see. Siwoo misses the bloody battlefield vibe Daesu brings, so he unleashes a yellow aura to show he's ready to fight. But Daesu counters with his dark red aura and explains that while Siwoo's been chilling in the demon world, he's been fighting strong hunters from all over and getting stronger. He confidently declares that Siwoo's killing intent no longer excites him like it used to. Daesu unleashes his dark power and playfully asks if Siwoo can still bring the heat to make the risk worth it. In response, Siwoo asks if he needs to punch another hole through Daesu's mouth to get an answer. Just as they're about to go at it, Kang-ho jumps in, shouting for them to calm down and think about where they are and how serious the situation is. Kang-ho reminds Daesu that he's an SS rank hunter and represents the nation. Starting a fight in a public place? Not cool. He asks Daesu if he gets the weight of his position. Turning to our guy, Kang-ho tells him that even though he's with HMCS and protected by the Empire Guild, things aren't as wild as they used to be. A fight between hunters would grab way too much attention. Kang-ho warns him that if he doesn't want his crew seen as part of a guild attacking the government, he needs to chill. That reasoning calms him down a bit. Daesu relaxes too, but comments that everything is as boring as ever. He misses the old days when they could just fight and go all out, constantly brawling for dominance whenever the chance came up. Daesu then asks if Kang-ho thinks it's a dull time. He admits that since he got fired up, even just for a moment, he'll answer one thing that he had nothing to do with young Minjun's death, and Yowa came to him on her own. Daesu jokingly asks if it's really his fault if his disciples turn out to be a mess. After that, he turns and walks away, telling Kang-ho that if he's got more questions, he should come find him next time properly. Daesu promises to set up a place where Kang-ho can let loose as much as he wants. Our hero stays quiet, and Kang-ho lets out a sigh of relief, glad he prevented a clash between two powerhouse hunters. A moment later, the elevator stops on the 8th floor, and Daesu steps out. A guard nervously reports some weird noises from the upper floors, but Daesu cuts him off, reminding him no one on this continent is strong enough to threaten his safety. He tells the guard to forget about it. The guard bows and apologizes quickly. Daesu then instructs him to contact Maryang Daesu, get an A-rank gate ready, and bring Yowa to him. 7 hours earlier, Sejun was watching a video on his computer when Yowa walked in. He asks what she's looking at. She reminds him about the recently discovered gate they found together, and tells him that several hunter corpses were found around it. The autopsy shows that all their internal organs popped at a cellular level. Yowa thinks the hunters either fought someone with a specific skill or ingested something toxic. But the real issue is that all the hunters are linked to a shady trade guild called IZ. She explains that IZ operates near the new gate and is so low profile that she's never heard of it before. There's barely any info on IZ, but rumors say the guild's leader is a demon. Sejun is taken aback and asks where she heard that. Yowa replies that working closely with the government means she hears a lot of stuff. She tells him it's up to him if he believes it, as she'll handle things her way. She turns to leave, adding that they're definitely making moves and that she'll keep him posted as soon as she knows more. As she walks away, she mentions that Daesu is watching their guild, so Sejun shouldn't contact her unless she reaches out first. Sejun stops her and asks why she's doing all this, but she just says to keep it a secret from her master and that she doesn't plan on coming back. Sejun already figured Yowa wouldn't stick with Dao for 10 years without a reason. He sits back down, wondering why she's acting like this now. Even if she's teaming up with Daesu to search for Siwoo, now that Siwoo is back, her behavior is confusing. He knows Siwoo trusts his 3 direct disciples completely, but they all seem burdened by their own secrets. He can't fully trust any of them. Frustrated, Sejun holds his head and calls out Yowa and Siwoo's names, wondering what they're thinking. Suddenly Siwoo shows up. Having overheard him, he asks what's up with Yowa, making Sejun stand up in shock. Siwoo presses him, wanting to know if something happened to Yowa, and warns him not to hide anything. Meanwhile, outside, Yowa is getting ready to leave when one of her members approaches and apologizes for interrupting. The member reports that Daesu has called for her urgently. Yowa curses under her breath but replies that she gets it and is on her way. 10 years back, right after Siwoo went missing, Daesu had a chat with a demon. He asked if the demon wanted his help in wiping everyone's memories of Min Siwoo. This demon, who was under the second Lord of Calamity, was all for it, claiming Siwoo was the only human who nearly took down all 4 lords. The demon lord needed to keep control over the free-willed demons, and losing to a human would mess that up. Hikaten chimed in, saying that even though the war was over, the chaos was still kicking. Sticking to their deal and keeping things in line among demons would actually help both Siwoo and Daesu out. Daesu shot back that it was a ridiculous idea. Just because they had shaken hands on the treaty didn't mean the demons could forget the most important detail. Humans won the war in the end. He questioned why they should help demons who were now stuck in the polar regions fixing the mess they made. But Hikaten didn't back down. He pointed out they'd been keeping an eye on Daesu and knew he secretly regretted the war ending. He mentioned that Daesu discovered some new, incredible power, but now he couldn't use it freely. Hikaten told Daesu to stop pretending, The truth was, he just wanted to face stronger opponents. He promised they could help him unlock Mana's ultimate form. Daesu was taken aback for a moment. He asked if the demons would really go that far just to erase their lord's loss. And what if he got stronger and became an even bigger danger to them? Hikatan explained that demons lived much longer than humans, which changed their perspective. Their main goal was to learn the real nature of mana and the dimensional gates. With that, he turned to leave, telling Daesu they'd be waiting for a positive reply and calling him Korea's strongest hunter. Fast forward to now, Daesu was chilling inside an empty F-rank gate owned by the Infinite Guild, just waiting for his guard to check in. The guard reported that they found a gate with no living entities left, just as Daesu had asked, and access was all locked down under his ownership. Daesu gave the guard props for a job well done, and asked if the invitation had been sent out. The guard confirmed and reminded him about the summit meeting happening the next day. Daesu simply said he knew and told the guard not to make him repeat himself. Out of nowhere, Yoa barged in, clearly annoyed. She reminded Daesu that he told her to go on a business trip and wanted to know why he called her here. Daesu signaled to his guard to leave, warning Yoa to watch her tone with other people around. After the guard stepped out, she pressed him about what was going on. Daesu confessed that he knew she suspected him of being involved in Siwoo's disappearance. He admitted that he neither agreed nor went along with the demon's offer back then. Still, even though he knew Siwoo was fading from existence, it wasn't his problem. Yoa was furious, demanding to know what kind of nonsense he was saying. Daesu released a little power from his hand and explained that the reason he felt uncomfortable about his past actions was that those events had ultimately made him stronger. He thought about it and just wanted confirmation. Both he and Siwoo were the real powerhouses. Daesu attacks Yoa, but she dodges at the last second and bends down to power up. She demands to know what he means by the demon's proposal. As everything clicks into place, her anger explodes. She realizes Daesu is the reason Siwoo is missing, and the reason there is no trace of him in any records. Burning with rage, she unleashes her full power and tries to kick Daesu in the head. He blocks her with ease. He grabs her leg and yanks her down. His voice is cold as he tells her she is just like her mother, a fiery temper, holding on to enemies for her own selfish reasons. Blind to the bigger picture. With a brutal slam, he drives her into the ground and the floor shatters beneath her. Injured and struggling, Yoa hears Daesu tell her she is nothing but a tool, just a way to awaken the full strength in Siwoo. Daesu goes on about how the inferiority he carries from the past is fading with Siwoo's disappearance, but it still lingers like a dirty stain. Now that Siwoo's back, he's ready to get rid of it for good. Even hurt, Yoa laughs and asks if he really believes Siwoo will play along with this twisted game just because of her. Daesu steps on her shoulder, pushing down harder as he explains that he knows Siwoo's plan. He recalls how, back when Siwoo was busy playing house with his family, Daesu doubted him. But after seeing the determination in Siwoo's eyes now, he's sure Siwoo has left a lot behind in that other world over the last decade. With more pressure on her shoulder, he tells Yoa she doesn't have to do anything except be the spark. He confesses he doesn't know the details about Minjun's death, but promises to use every card he's got. Then, he unleashes a chain that wraps around her and urges her to stop fighting. The shackles were made by the best in the Black Abyss, and even an S-rank hunter like her cannot break free easily. The chains absorb her mana, and the harder she pushes back, the more they drain her energy. If she keeps it up, they'll eventually break her down. Daesu says he has no idea how long his fight with Siwoo will last, but until then she can struggle all she wants. That is her purpose. Yoa stammeringly asks if he really thinks this will change anything. She yells that he's just trash. Suddenly she feels someone charging in. Our hero arrives, launching an intense attack at Daesu. The impact creates a massive shockwave, but Daesu manages to block it. With excitement, Daesu declares that history will be rewritten from here on out. The outdated hero will fall, and he will claim the title of the strongest in the land. Our hero smirks back, calling Daesu a lunatic, and casts a spell to strike him with thunder, but Daesu easily blocks it with a shield. Laughing, Daesu mocks him, saying his power feels weak and that the gap between them has widened over the last 10 years. Siwoo stays quiet, glancing at Yoa still chained up behind him. Frey, looking worried, asks if Siwoo is alright and reminds him that Daesu is a monster and his power hasn't fully returned. But Siwoo just says they need to go all out with what they've got. Frey's yelling at him, freaking out about how his mana is barely even half recovered. He warns that Daesu is way stronger than any human it's ever faced, and doubts it can even handle a skill that big when it's all weak. Plus, using its limit could lead to some crazy side effects. But our guy just calmly says he only needs 50% of what he used in the other world, and that's more than enough. No problem at all. Daesu, who's blocking his attacks like it's nothing, mocks him, wondering if he's regretting rushing in so cocky. Siwoo cranks up the power against Daesu again, but he still stops it. Out of nowhere, our guy zips in front of Daesu with insane speed and declares that for a loser like him, that much power is plenty. He lets loose an even stronger attack, cracking the ground and sending debris flying, but somehow Daesu blocks it again. Yowa's watching in shock. This is a clash between first-gen hunters and real awakeners. Their casting speeds are so fast it's hard to even keep up. She knew there was a gap in power, but she never expected the difference between S rank and SS rank to be this huge. Daisu pulls out a spear and grips it tightly, laughing as he tells Siwoo it's been too long since he's felt this kind of thrill. He throws the spear at Siwoo, shouting how good it feels to let loose and dive into the pure essence of mana. Siwoo bends down and starts casting a spell, teasing Daisu about his old habit of collecting toys and showing off, even after 10 years. He creates this massive wall as a shield, but Daisu's spear tears right through it, smashing the wall to pieces. Frey screams, wondering if Daisu is even human. It warns him that Daisu seems strong enough to go toe-to-toe with a high-ranking demon, and that the spear coming at them is no regular tool. Siwoo says Daisu has always been a brute, but at the end of the day, he's just a half-baked human. He catches the spear mid-air, freezing Daisu for a split second, and then he bursts out laughing and charges right at him. Without slowing down, Daisu conjures a swarm of swords, grabs a few, and leaps, telling Siwoo not to blink. Siwoo quickly throws up a shield just in time to block the attack. Daisu smirks and mocks him, asking if that was all it took to make him crack. He then conjures a giant metal hammer and calls Siwoo's shield pathetic, slamming it over and over, vowing to smash it to dust. Siwoo responds with his own spell, summoning an Ice Fang spear that creates sharp ice spikes behind Daisu, ready to strike. But Daisu unleashes a surge of power that blows the spikes apart. He brushes off the little bits of ice stuck to him, saying that a true master never goes down easy. Annoyed, Siwoo tells Daisu to stop talking and take off the shackles if he doesn't want to die. He questions Daisu, asking if Yowa really means nothing to him and if he thinks he can keep his spot with the government after pulling such a lame stunt. Daisu shakes his head, saying that Yowa's still got value. He thinks her being the daughter of a serial killer makes her a useful pawn. Yowa's totally taken aback and yells at him to shut up, warning that if he keeps running his mouth, it'll be the end for her. Out of nowhere, she feels a strong presence from Siwoo. He tells her to stay put and then unleashes even more power. Daisu, angry and surprised, burst out laughing, saying this is exactly what he wants. His skin buzzes with excitement as he calls forth a shield and sword, ready to really get the fight going. But before he can make a move, Siwoo appears right in front of him and lands a punch. Daisu blocks it with his shield, but it shatters like glass. That's when he realizes Siwoo's mana control and strength have completely shifted. Daisu quickly jumps back and conjures up some armor to protect himself. He notices Siwoo's skills have evolved and questions whether his cowardly style has finally improved after all these years. Siwoo fires back, telling Daisu it's rich for him to criticize tactics when he doesn't even get strategy. They launch into a wild flurry of attacks and blocks, moving at super fast speeds. Daisu admits he was a rookie back then, and throws a dagger near Siwoo's feet. After that last hit, he figures something out and sets off a trap, with chains suddenly wrapping around Siwoo's legs. Then, Daisu summons a massive sword, way bigger than before, and swings it at Siwoo with all his strength, declaring he's not his equal anymore. The force of the swing tears the ground apart, causing a huge explosion. Yowa yells for Siwoo, but her voice gets drowned out by the chaos. To her amazement, Siwoo calmly tells Daisu he's actually right about one thing. There's some truth in all his nonsense. They're definitely not equals. Siwoo stands there without a scratch, just holding the sword Daisu tried to take a swing at him with. Our hero's grip on the sword is so tight that Daisu can't yank it back. Daisu knows that the sword he's got is a legendary artifact, a mega sword that can slice through entire buildings, but it doesn't even budge in Siwoo's hands. Siwoo lifts the sword like it's nothing, and asks Daisu if he's really been fighting for 10 years. Then, in one quick motion, he punches Daisu in the side, bragging that he's been at it for 100 all on his own. The hit sends Daisu flying and slamming into the ground. Even after that, Daisu laughs and says he's having a blast. He can't even remember the last time he bled. He stands up and asks if Siwoo's been holding back his mana just for that one hit. He shows off his watch, a regulator that keeps his power in check, and tells Siwoo that if he's serious, he should unleash his full strength too. Siwoo tosses the great sword aside and channels some of his power into his hand. Daisu explains how 5 years ago, all officially recognized SS rank hunters had to wear the bracelet. It limits their physical abilities and skills to avoid causing chaos. If anyone removes it without government approval, they're instantly labeled a criminal. Then Daisu chucks his watch away, breaking free from the restrictions. He smirks, calling the bracelet a dog collar, and mocks Daisu for being nothing but a fighter. He asks if Daisu climbed up the ranks just to get government permission for a dogfight. Daisu, clearly ticked off, tells Siwoo he's really overestimating himself. With a grin, Daisu asks if Siwoo really thinks that's the only reason he's here. Then he unleashes his full power, his aura smashing the ground all around him. Daisu yells that he hasn't had anyone worth testing his strength against until now. Siwoo calmly releases his own aura, challenging Daisu to show what he's got. Their auras collide, creating a wild force that tears through the area. The power of their clash cracks the ground and shakes the gate. Yowa stumbles as everything rattles, realizing that even their mana collision is enough to shake things up. At this rate, the gate could collapse, and innocent bystanders might get hurt. Determined to intervene, she breaks free from the chains holding her back, knowing she has to step in no matter what. Meanwhile, Siwoo and Daesu keep going at it with everything they've got. They're trading blows, and each attack gets blocked or countered with insane precision. But it's Daesu who's having a tougher time. He uses his hammer to smash the ground, sending big chunks of rocks flying at Siwoo. But Siwoo dodges with a burst of speed, moving way too fast for Daesu to hit. Frey, watching from inside Siwoo, says its stomach feels a bit queasy, yet admits the power feels awesome. Even at half strength, Siwoo's full power is on a whole different level. The clash of Siwoo and Daesu's powers keeps escalating. Despite Daesu breaking his limits, he's still struggling. He coughs up blood, realizing that even without restrictions, there's still a huge gap between them. Refusing to accept this, Daesu summons a swarm of swords. Laughing crazily as he curses, he grabs a dark weapon next to him and throws it at Siwoo, commanding it to tear him apart. The weapon shifts into a monstrous tiger, sinking its teeth into Siwoo's arm. Siwoo instantly recognizes it as a monster sealed in an artifact. Without missing a beat, he casts a magic circle and tells Frey to activate the Tamer skill. Frey does its thing, and the tiger quickly turns on Daesu, realizing Siwoo is the new master. Furious, Daesu calls Siwoo a bastard and unleashes a new power, ready to keep the fight going. But before they can throw it down again, Yowa shows up, yelling for them to cut it out. She wants to know if they've both lost their minds and tells them to take a look around. The gate is about to break apart, and all that magic leaking out could cause major problems if it reaches the outside world. Yowa warns Daesu that he won't be able to dodge the blame if things go south. She reminds him that an international tribunal will come after him. Daesu calls her an arrogant brat, but Yowa stands firm. She tells him that while he's been losing his grip, she's already reached out to the Hunter Association and HMCS headquarters. They won't take long to respond and reopen the gate. She pushes for them to end the fight now. As she moves closer to Siwoo, he stays quiet, his face unreadable. Just then, Daesu's watch buzzes with an incoming call. He picks it up, annoyed, and hears Edward from HMCS headquarters on the line. Edward says the situation is urgent and needs his immediate attention. Daesu mutters a curse but agrees to head over. Before he leaves, he turns and coldly says that this is why you shouldn't take in wild beasts. He claims he's lost interest and tells them to get lost. As Daesu strides out of the gate, Yowa feels a mixture of relief and anxiety wash over her. She drops to her knees, overwhelmed by the realization that Siwoo is the last person she wants to find out about her family, and now he knows the truth. She never meant to betray the kindness and sincerity Siwoo had shown her, even if it meant risking her life to keep her secret. Tears fill her eyes as she wonders how she can even talk to him now. How can she explain that the guy he's fed, cared for, and trusted is actually the daughter of a criminal? While she's lost in these thoughts, Siwoo comes over. He bends down next to her, his voice soft and caring, asking if she's okay and if she's hurt. Yowa is taken aback by his kindness after everything that went down. Overwhelmed, she hugs him tightly and cries her heart out. Siwoo stays calm, gently patting her back and teasing her about having way too much energy. In his office, Daesu is on a video call with Edward, wondering why he's making such a big deal over something Hunter said. He insists he hasn't broken any laws and points out that Hunter's freakout is just causing confusion at HMCS headquarters. It's their problem, not his. Daesu questions if it's really necessary to get worked up over something as small as some light training behind closed doors. Facing Edward, Daesu waits for a response. Edward calmly tells him that things would be different if Daesu hadn't taken off his restraint bracelet. He reminds him that SS rank hunters aren't allowed to fight each other, and any changes need to be reported to the association or HMCS, rules that clearly annoy Daesu. Using magic against an HMCS hunter means an investigation, and as a national leader, Daesu could even end up in an international court. Even if his country finds no fault, the international laws still apply. With a smile, Edward suggests there's no need to make a big deal out of a small issue in peaceful times. He asks Daesu to handle it quietly in Korea. As he stands up, he mentions they still need to hear from everyone involved, which means they'll have to meet with the guy Daesu confronted. Daesu, feeling suspicious, asks if Edward is targeting Siwoo. Edward just says they'll talk in Korea and hangs up. Furious and humiliated, Daesu remembers how 10 years ago he was catching up to Siwoo. But since Siwoo disappeared, his power grew far beyond Daesu's reach, like he became a whole different person. Daesu can't believe how much the gap has widened between them now. He wonders what Siwoo has been up to all this time and how long it's been since he last felt that thrill of unrestricted fighting. Sitting down, Daesu realizes that the strength he gained while being held back isn't enough anymore. After all this time, he finally has a goal worth breaking free for again. With a mix of frustration and determination, Daesu welcomes back the mad dog, Siwoo. A week later, at the Azure Flower Guild, Siwoo asks Yowa why she didn't say hi, even though she knew he was back. She shyly admits she has no excuses and says it's just enough for her to know he's returned. Siwoo sighs in frustration and asks if she found out anything about Minjun while he was away. Yowa apologized, saying she couldn't find anything useful. She made it clear that no one in the country is involved, and that Daesu just keeps her around for his own gain. She also mentioned she hasn't seen any proof that Dai-su is up to anything shady with his siblings or disciples. Panicking a bit, she insisted that her judgment wasn't clouded by the fact that Dai-su is her blood relative. It's all based on what she's observed so far. Siwoo nodded and gently patted her head, saying that if Dai-su truly saw her as family, he wouldn't treat her like this. Yeohwa smiled back, feeling better because Siwoo had already helped her heal from everything. But he reminded her that it's not just about feeling okay, it's about breaking free from that toxic bloodline. He told her it didn't matter if her mom was a criminal, she'd lived her own life and hadn't done anything wrong. If she still felt guilty, she should live with pride and give back, and that he'd be there for her. His words brought back some memories, and she ended up laughing through her tears. Smiling, she said she never felt truly alone because of friends like him. Wiping her eyes, she admitted she felt bad for Sejun, realizing she'd made him worry for nothing. From his point of view, it must be tough to trust her with all her secrets. Siwoo scratched his head and said Sejun was cautious, so she should sort things out with him when they met tomorrow. Yeohwa was surprised and asked what he meant by tomorrow, especially since things were still awkward between her and Sejun. He just pointed out that they're both adults. He assured her he had already talked to Sejun and mentioned that even if he wasn't sure how Dai-su was handling things, at least it hadn't blown up into a huge mess. He checked his phone, chuckled at Sejun's instincts, and then noticed he had 9 missed calls from HMCS. Just then, Junggu burst in, looking surprised and asking why Jungho wasn't gone yet after his trip. Junggu, clearly frustrated, said it was urgent and scolded him for not picking up. He'd been searching everywhere. Then Jeonho showed up too, and informed him that he got a call from HMCS International Headquarters. Edward is coming to Korea to meet him in person. Jeonho asked if he knew anything about it, but Siwoo only responded with a question. Did Edward find out? He looked annoyed at the news. When he asked if Edward gave a reason for the visit, Jeonho explained there was a gag order on the whole branch, so no details were available. Confused, Junggu asked if Siwoo really knew the vice president. Jeonho said Edward mentioned Siwoo by name and assumed he was involved, which was a first for the HMCS Korean branch. When pressed for answers, Siwoo simply said sorry. He could not share anything with the gag order in place. Jeonho accepted this and let him know that the headquarters would reach out once they had a fixed schedule, so he should just wait for now. As Jeonho dragged Junggu away, he whispered for him to figure out what was going on, whether by buttering up Siwoo or using all his connections. He also whispered questions about Yeohwa's relationship with Dai-su and why she and Siwoo seemed so comfortable together. Junggu shrugged and said he had no idea. Noticing the HMCS members whispering, Yeohwa told Siwoo he should head back since there would be a lot of eyes on him for a while. As they walked, he asked Yeohwa why she suddenly wanted to see him off. She said his kindness felt like a blessing and that she was heading home anyway. When he asked about her plans, she said she'd follow his lead if he was okay with that. Still shaken by Minjun's death, she promised to help however she could, stressing that no matter what, she was still a capable guild leader. Their chat got interrupted when a black car with tinted windows rolled up in front of them. Siwoo looked annoyed, but Yeohwa stopped him from going over, recognizing the car. Someone inside rolled down the window and taunted them for backing down even after everything they had learned, saying they were no fun. When the window fully came down, they saw it was Dai-su. Dai-su tells Siwoo to hop in the car, which barely makes Siwoo hold his temper. She wants to know what he's after his earlier stunt, but Siwoo just asks calmly why he should even care. Dai-su replies that if they want to keep pretending to be this master-disciple duo, they better start paying attention. Yeohwa is fuming and asks if Dai-su thinks this is funny, but Siwoo jumps in, telling her to back off. He promises to keep in touch, then heads to the car, opens the door, and gets in. The car drives off, leaving Yeohwa standing alone in the street. During the ride, Siwoo can't help but mock Dai-su for showing up after getting his butt kicked. Dai-su just laughs it off, saying the fight isn't finished yet. If Yeohwa hadn't interrupted, he would have wrapped it up already. He goes on to say that thanks to Siwoo, they'll soon have a real international stage to settle things. Siwoo scoffs at him, telling him to get lost and can't wrap his head around how someone like him is in charge. Out of the blue, Dai-su starts talking about Pandemonium, instantly catching Siwoo's interest. Dai-su explains that even though everyone thinks Pandemonium is wiped out, there are still some members scattered around the world. He reveals that after Siwoo disappeared for 10 years, demons actually reached out to him through their network and even asked for help in erasing any trace of Siwoo. This means that Pandemonium has been keeping tabs on him too. Dai-su asks Siwoo if he thinks Pandemonium is just some cult playing with dark powers, or if they're really the hidden pawns of demons. Siwoo stays quiet, so Dai-su keeps going. After Pandemonium fell and demons were pushed to the far north, most of their signs disappeared. But since then, leaders, including Dai-su, have been watching for any demon activity. However, they hadn't found anything significant until recently. Dai-su then drops a bombshell about reports of half-demons in the Middle Eastern desert. Siwoo is taken aback and asks if he's hearing that right. Half-demons? Dai-su confirms it, explaining that these are humans who've had long-term contact with demons or kids born from demon-human pairings. They might not have horns or wings like full demons, but they use black mana. He mentions this is all he's getting from government officials. He explains that the harsher the landscape, the more likely that high-level gates will pop up, making it tough for outside forces to check things out. Then, Daesu turns to Siwoo and asks if he was siding with the demons during his 10 years away, bringing up the black mana he used in their fight. Siwoo firmly denies it, but Daesu teases him, reminding him how much he used to hate demons. Yet at the end of the day, Daesu suggests that Siwoo is just as desperate for power. Siwoo asks if Daesu really thinks that and tells him to pull over if he's done talking. The car pulls over by the side of the road and he gets out. Before heading off, he makes it clear to Daesu not to get the wrong idea. He's not into teaming up with shady demons or getting tangled up with someone as reckless as Daesu. He suggests Daesu should drop the tough guy act, but adds that if Daesu ever feels like getting himself killed, he should reach out. And while he's at it, Daesu should kneel and say sorry to Yowa. Daesu, annoyed but still grinning, says he understands Siwoo has his quirks, but it's pathetic to waste time on weaklings who'll never measure up. He slams the car door, warning Siwoo that he'll regret this someday. The car drives off, leaving Siwoo to think about the reality of half-demons. The next day at the HMCS building, there's a lot going on, and the staff is taken aback by the representatives from the HMCS International Headquarters. People are whispering, speculating if it's just a routine check or something more important. No one knows for sure. In the branch chief's office, Jaeonho thanks Edward for coming and introduces Siwoo as a new recruit for the HMCS gangbook team. Edward greets Siwoo politely, but Siwoo casually questions what kind of setup this is, catching Jaeonho off guard. Jaeonho quickly reminds Siwoo about his position, but Edward steps in, asking Jaeonho to leave them alone for a minute. Jaeonho, confused but careful, agrees, not wanting to ruin his chance of a connection with HQ. He tells Edward to call him if anything comes up and steps out, unsure of what's going on but trusting Siwoo. Once Jaeonho and the others leave, Edward loses his cool and calls Siwoo a bastard. He grabs Siwoo by the collar, demanding to know where he's been for the last decade. Siwoo asks Edward to chill, and after a moment, Edward lets go, muttering some curses. Edward admits he's glad to see Siwoo back but presses him again about his whereabouts. With a sigh, Siwoo realizes he has to explain everything again. He gestures for Edward to take a seat. After a bit of back and forth, when Siwoo finishes his story, Edward can't help but think that the whole idea of another dimension and different time flow sounds crazy, but with the gates opening on Earth, who knows, right? Edward thinks back to when Siwoo was a big deal, but now it feels like his name is lost in the shuffle. Seeing Siwoo again makes Edward feel like he's starting to remember things he thought were long gone. Siwoo jokes that Edward seems to have a good memory considering he just heard his name. Edward insists he can't forget someone who saved him countless times during the chaotic days. Siwoo finds Edward's praise a bit much and asks how he's been in touch with Yowa. Edward explains that HMCS headquarters is leading a joint investigation with different guilds worldwide, and Yowa's guild is part of that. She's made a name for herself in a recent case, which is how Edward got her contact info. Then Edward asks Siwoo if he's planning to stick with the HMCS Korea branch and offers him a spot at headquarters. Siwoo declines, which surprises Edward, who asks why he doesn't want the chance. Siwoo simply says he doesn't see a reason to. Edward pushes back, saying someone like Siwoo really belongs on a bigger stage and he could use a dependable right-hand man. Siwoo thanks him for the offer but says he's already on his own investigation. Edward agrees that HQ could help with that, pointing out their extensive investigative authority. Siwoo says he'll think about it and asks what the joint investigation is about. Edward explains that a massacre of hunters happened near a newly discovered gate out in the desert. While most assume it's got to do with monsters, the autopsy shows poisoning. All the hunters died from something they ingested, and they suspected it was illegal enhancement drugs. Siwoo looks pretty shocked by this news. He asks Edward if he's talking about some kind of awakener drug. Edward nods and explains that there's been no official word yet, because they still don't have solid details on the substance or how it's being distributed. But behind the scenes, the Central Bureau is looking into a bunch of awakened deaths that have been happening worldwide over the last 6 months. Edward mentions that the autopsies show one weird thing in common. The victims' internal organs are rupturing at the cell level. It's a tough case to go public with since most of the victims are awakened criminals, and they never find any drugs in their systems. Luckily, a witness in China stepped up about a similar situation. The witness claims that the deceased awakeners breathed in a black powder before going on a rampage and eventually self-destructing. Those who inhale the powder show insane levels of mana release and boost their skills, acting almost like living bombs that wipe out everything around them before blowing up. He asks Edward if this means the black powder is an illegal awakener enhancement drug, and if it ties in with that recent desert incident. Edward clarifies that it's not just a connection, it's directly linked. That desert incident is seen as the starting point for the whole illegal drug case. Confused, our hero wonders why the desert incident is considered the starting point when the investigation's been going on for 6 months. Edward explains that they found a gate in the desert with a huge number of casualties at its entrance. The Azure Blossom Guild was the first to grab the original form of the black powder near the gate. They also stumbled upon a vehicle belonging to a sketchy trade guild called IZ. Edward adds that even though the IZ Guild doesn't have any known illegal ties and seems like a small operation, something about it feels off. He leans back in his chair, complaining about getting wrapped up in these messes and anticipating the hassle ahead. Edward grins and says he already knows Yowa is his disciple, and since Yowa was the first to find the original form of the drug, she can't just bail out on this case now. Edward mentions that if he helps, Yowa's troubles will be a lot lighter. He questions whether Siwoo will really ignore this mess, knowing his precious disciple is caught up in something dangerous. Edward calls him by his nickname seriously, making him realize Edward has already set everything in motion. Reluctantly, Siwoo agrees to help, partly because he has his own business in the Middle East too. This lifts Edward's spirits, and he excitedly promises to do whatever he can if Siwoo is in. Edward brings up the whole situation with Dae-soo, mentioning that he knows about their unsanctioned live combat training. He offers to help sort it out, but Siwoo just tells him to drop it, explaining that even though Dae-soo's a greedy jerk, he's still a person. The next day at Sejun's place, Sejun spots Siwoo packing and asks if he's heading out for the Central Bureau's international investigation. Siwoo confirms it, saying Edward personally asked him for the favor. Sejun admits he knows Edward but is curious about how he got in touch. Siwoo says it's a long story and hints that Yowa will fill him in later, which surprises Sejun. Just as he's about to ask why Yowa is suddenly involved, his phone rings. He answers and walks away, asking Yowa how she even got his number. Frey asks where they're off to this time. Siwoo tells him their first stop is Europe, where the Central Bureau's HQ is. Frey wonders if they have chicken there, and Siwoo guesses they probably do. Then Frey asks if he'll be pushing their mana to the max like in the last fight, which takes Siwoo by surprise. He playfully asks Frey if he's worried about running low on food. Frey freaks out, insisting it's not about the food but something weird going on inside him. Siwoo asks what he means by weird, and Frey explains that since they got back to Earth, he's been getting more used to Earth's mana, and his output is increasing, but he's also feeling less in control. Frey suspects that their dimensional travel messes with him, and that the last fight when Siwoo pushed his mana might have triggered this. He adds that since they made a contract in the other realm, Frey won't attack him. But the more his mana recovers, the worse the loss of control gets. If Frey totally loses it, who knows what might happen. There's even a chance that Siwoo might not be able to use his powers when it really counts. After thinking for a bit, he responds that he isn't really relying on Frey's power right now anyway, so it's not a big deal. This annoys Frey, who asks if he's saying he doesn't need him. Siwoo clarifies that if they end up fighting demons, he'll definitely need Frey's strength, but for now, it's not something to stress over. He stretches, thinking that his warm-up fight with Dae-soo turned out to be useful. As he remembers the awakened enhancement drug, he realizes it all feels way too familiar. 2 days later at the HMCS International Headquarters, a woman tells her team that Edward is something else. Even with the staff shortage, she can't believe he's adding people to a sensitive case without following the right steps. Another woman agrees, saying Edward's always been unpredictable. Hayakawa Hikari, the captain of HMCS Tokyo's first team, says she can handle the Asia team on her own. She asks her brother Kumo, who instantly agrees, calling her the youngest recruit, first captain, and the prettiest girl in Japan. Hikari laughs, telling him to keep the compliments coming. Layla, captain of HMCS Europe's first team, says she'd rather work with Yowa than Hikari, even though Yowa isn't officially on the team. Hikari snaps, demanding to know what Layla just said, but Layla calmly replies that she didn't say anything. Hikari reminds her that they both have translation earpieces and to speak up if she has something to say. A guy shows up saying Director Leone wants everyone in the main hall. Hikari asks if the mysterious new recruit has arrived. He awkwardly laughs and says the recruit just landed with Edward. Layla wonders who it is since Edward greeted him in person. She questions whether the recruit is even officially part of HMCS. The guy confirms that the recruit is Hunterman Saiwoo from HMCS Korea. Everyone gathered in the meeting room, and Edward kicked things off by thanking everyone for coming. He introduced Siwoo as the new team member. Layla chimed in, introducing herself and her vice captain, Stefan, who's from the Europe branch. Hikari then introduced herself along with her right-hand person, Kumo, from the Asia branch. Edward explained the situation was urgent, so they needed to dive right in. With Siwoo on board, they had to go over the case details again. He asked Layla to give a quick summary, and she stepped up. Before she started, Edward reminded them to be super careful with any leaks, since this was a classified investigation. Just then, Edward's secretary knocked to remind him about his next meeting. He stood up, said he trusted everyone would do great work, and left with her, leaving the room quiet. After a moment, Layla cleared her throat and said they should start the briefing. She went over the case number, known as the Illegal Awakener Enhancement Drug Case. Their team was responsible for investigating the site where the original substance was found. They discovered an A-ranked gate at the location, along with 6 Awakener corpses nearby. Autopsies showed they had internal damage similar to past victims. The enhancement drug was found in the bodies. The gate had signs of a battle, but nothing seemed off inside. They still needed to evaluate the threat level since no enhancement drugs were found inside. Whether it gets cleared would depend on how the investigation goes. Layla also mentioned they found a vehicle belonging to the trade guild IZ near the site. After checking it out, they found IZ is a small legal guild operating in the Middle East, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary there. So, their team will mainly focus on digging deeper into the gate and doing a thorough investigation around the site. Once she wrapped up her briefing, Layla asked if anyone had questions. Our hero said he was already up to speed on the case details, so he didn't have questions about that. But he asked if there was any info on demonic beings or half-demons. Layla looked a bit puzzled and asked if he thought they might be involved in the case. Our hero clarified he wasn't suggesting a direct link, just thought it was worth checking out, just in case. He explains that if the drug is completely man-made, figuring out where it came from wouldn't be so tricky. If it was made using specific skills, a tracking type awakener would have caught it way earlier. This raises some red flags for the trade guild, and he's curious if there's any info about the Eyes Guild from past cases. Hikari jumps in, clearly confused, and asks why he's bringing up stuff that seems unrelated. He calmly replies that they won't know if it's related or not until they do some digging. He mentions that he's bringing it up because of some info he stumbled upon. This just irritates Hikari more, who arrogantly questions how a simple hunter from the Korea branch, who was just thrown into this investigation, could know things that even the main office hasn't mentioned. She thinks it's laughable. Hikari argues that if it were a real lead, the headquarters would have acted by now. She points out that he's not part of the alliance or a recognized ranker, so it's ridiculous he's been dropped into an international case. Now he's talking about demonic beings, which just annoys her further. She snaps, saying humans and demonic beings have teamed up for over 10 years, so bringing up old biases is pointless. She wants to know who he thinks he is saying all this. Siwoo just stays quiet. Layla yells at Hikari to chill, and Stefan steps in, urging everyone to keep it cool. He insists there's no need to get hostile this early in the investigation. Layla agrees, reminding them that as top reps from their branches, they need to focus on the case, not personal drama. This manages to calm Hikari down a bit. Layla tells Siwoo to concentrate on the investigation, and he agrees. She then lays out the plan for the desert operation the next day. After a few hours, she wraps up the briefing and tells everyone to get ready. Hikari's still upset, grilling Siwoo on who he is, where he came from, and how he got the vice chairman's attention. Layla tells Hikari they'll be working together for a while and advises her to let it go. Hikari's taken aback, asking if Layla is backing Siwoo. Layla clarifies she's not, but she thinks Siwoo seems more seasoned than she expected. Meanwhile, Siwoo stays in the meeting room, yawning and thinking this investigation could turn out to be way more annoying than he thought. Frey chimes in that he's been called out before for having zero social skills and being a total outcast. Siwoo brushes it off, saying he just isn't into formalities. Someone jokes about Siwoo's dramatic entrance. He replies that Edward took his sweet time and must be busy. Edward comes in, calling the investigation agency a circus. He says these guys call themselves awakeners but act like lunatics with bombs. After 10 years, it's still chaotic. Siwoo stands up and reminds Edward that with great power comes great responsibility, a lesson really learned through experience. As he walks up front, Edward asks about his team. Siwoo glances at the documents and says they're a bit of a hassle, but as long as they don't get in his way, he's fine with it. Edward grins, saying Siwoo hasn't changed in the last decade. He reminds him that tomorrow's mission is just a routine survey, so he should keep it simple. With HMCS backing them, everything should go smoothly. Siwoo nods, looking pretty indifferent. The next day, they show up at the HMCS Middle Eastern Branch headquarters, where a guy greets them. He tells them their accommodations are set up at the main office building and that a vehicle is ready to take them to the incident site the following day. Layla thanked the branch director and asked about the access permit for the gate at the incident site. Siwoo looks around while Frey gripes about the heat, calling it the worst place on Earth. Siwoo notices there aren't any signs of demons in the city, and the mana density seems stable, making him wonder if Edward is just sending them on a wild goose chase. Out of nowhere, Hikari calls out to him, warning him to stay sharp and focused if he wants to make it through this, making Siwoo realize this investigation is definitely going to be more annoying than he thought. Siwoo was curious about half-demons, and an Arab guy chimed in, saying he'd never actually seen one, just heard stories. He mentioned there's supposed to be a village in the deep desert where these demons live. Another dude was skeptical, saying he hadn't heard of this place and they don't keep tabs on every little faction. If there's a demon-run group out there, that's news to him. A woman added that half-demons look just like regular folks. Without a magic detector, you couldn't tell them apart from any human. Maybe things are better now, but 10 years ago, the war between humans and demons led to these hybrids. They're often treated like outcasts, so hiding and blending in is their best bet. Even if a half-demon is wandering around, no one would probably notice. Our guy thought the info wasn't super useful, and it looked like he'd need to dig deeper into the desert. Frey brought up food, but Siwoo just played it off like he didn't hear him. Frey then teased him about being an introvert, which just made Siwoo wonder why Frey was being confrontational all of a sudden. Frey pointed out that everyone else was hanging out in groups, questioning why he was wandering alone in this quiet desert town. Siwoo said he was just enjoying his free time and gathering some intel. Then Layla popped up, asking what he was doing there and mentioning that the HMCS base wasn't far off. It's apparently a pretty swanky spot to kick back. Siwoo insisted it was still his free time and he wanted to check out a few things first. He then asked why she was by herself if she was Hunter Layla. She explained that Stefan was working on the entry permit for the gate they'd hit tomorrow and the risk assessment was still in progress. Layla asked if he was part of HMCS Korea, so that meant he was under Director Bayek. She said she hadn't seen him during a previous visit to Korea, and he explained that he was recently recruited. Layla noted he had the vibe of a seasoned hunter and guessed he had at least 20 years under his belt. Siwoo silently acknowledged her sharp instincts and thought about changing the subject. He played it modestly, saying she was flattering him too much, and mentioned that the vice president said Layla was well known in the European branch. She brushed off the compliment, calling herself just an average investigator mostly stuck in Northern Europe. That made Siwoo think of working with a hunter from that area once, and he suddenly remembered the name, Hans. Layla seemed to recognize Hans too and showed him a picture. He confirmed it was Hans, joking that he'd never forget that smile. 10 years had gone by and Hans had aged. His face still looked familiar. Siwoo then asked if Hans was her dad. It's midday, and they're at the A-ranked CA3 gate in the northern desert. Layla kicks off their detailed investigation, and Stefan admits he's feeling a bit jittery since he usually deals with hunter crimes instead of gates. Layla assures him that they're not there to take down the gate, then uses her A-ranked secret garden skill called Wood Spear. This skill sips up mana from the ground, and roots start spreading out, picking up on any nearby mana and living beings. The stronger the user, the longer the roots last and the farther they reach. As the glowing tree takes shape, Layla lays out their mission. They're looking for clues about some illegal power-enhancing drugs linked to the gate. Siwoo thinks her skill is pretty incredible for both scouting and defending, and he's impressed with its range. Layla states she hasn't picked up any monster activity within 30 kilometers, but warns that her detection weakens the farther it goes. She tells everyone to stay alert, divide the area, and search systematically. Protecting the site is their top priority, and they should avoid fighting unless attacked. Hikari orders Kumo to check the whole area thoroughly. Kumo nods in agreement, but Siwoo mutters that it feels like Layla's just bossing everyone around. Hikari hears him and points out that Layla's rank is way above basic investigations. After wrapping up the briefing, Layla gives the go-ahead to split up and report anything they find. As they scatter, they sense something's off. Siwoo complains about the point of being a team if they all act solo. Frey teases him about being an introvert, and Siwoo snaps at Frey, saying he spotted something that looks like evidence of tampering. Frey checks it out and finds the area feels pretty off. Whatever is going on with that mana gate doesn't seem natural to him, and he wonders if someone's messing with it or if it's miasma. He pockets some strange black powder he discovers. The scene shifts to a bald grandpa on a call, asking if his master needs him. The caller, Siwoo, asks about the situation outside. The old man, hiding nearby, reports seeing a suspicious group of 6. Siwoo tells him to alert him immediately if they head into the gate. The old man suggests going in too, but Siwoo says no way. They might call for backup, and that would just complicate things. He insists the grandpa stay put and keep watching, which he agrees to. Frey mentions that the old man is around and asks when he got there. Siwoo says he's been tagging along since they got to the country, explaining the old guy is stealthy. Frey comments that Siwoo knows how to use people, and Siwoo responds that he believes those who mess up need to work for redemption. He mentions they need to figure out what's buried there that has messed with the mana since things could get tricky after dark. Meanwhile, Hikari and Kumo are checking out the area. Kumo reports they've looked everywhere but can't find any signs of drugs or monsters. Hikari is puzzled, saying it doesn't make sense for an uncleared gate to be this clean. Kumo recalls they found evidence of fighting outside, suggesting maybe those involved in the fight were taken out. Hikari adds that maybe the drug users never even went into the gate, but argues that if there were power-enhancing drugs, the gate shouldn't look so untouched. After the incident, access to the gate is really tight. If someone managed to clean it out, some signs should be left behind. If they didn't get in, the stuff inside should still be untouched. There's gotta be something valuable in there. They need to find something else worth reporting if there's no clear proof. HQ sent them here with high hopes. They can't just head back empty-handed. Hikari is determined. She bites her lip and tells herself that even if they have to dig up the whole area, they need to find something. She figures that if this is really an A-rank gate, valuable mana stones must be buried underground. So she summons her Spirit of Fire, which shows up as a huge snake, and gets to work digging. She's pretty impressed by its power. Layla watches all this in shock since she hasn't gotten any alerts about it. She calls Stefan over to check it out and mutters to herself that things never go smoothly. Just then, those 3 people from earlier pop up behind her, looking ready to ambush. Layla casually suggests they might as well call it a day and head back, unaware they're behind her. Meanwhile, Kumo turns to Hikari and asks if just one attack really caused all this mess. He tells her she's incredible. She responds that now they should see if they can find some mana stones or enhancement drugs. But then she spots something unusual and asks if those are corpses. Kumo answers that they are definitely monsters that thrive on darkness and mess with the cycle of life to come back. He adds that they look like zombies and suddenly they start gearing up to attack. Hikari and her brother are about to get swarmed by the undead popping up from underground. Kumo notices that undead-type monsters can't usually move in such big packs. Hikari thinks they need to figure out what's up, but first, they have to take these creeps out. She uses her skill, Divine Spirit, which is a top-tier move that brings a divine snake from another realm to help out. The snake zips toward the zombies in no time, sending them flying like toys, and some even get crushed under its weight. Hikari rolls her eyes, saying they're just a bunch of walking corpses, but they still manage to catch her off guard. Then, the ground shakes, and even more monsters start to crawl out. Kumo wonders just how many of these things are buried below. As he turns to tell Hikari to watch out, Stefan swoops in to save her using his skill, slicing through the zombies in a flash. Stefan asks what's going on and where the monsters came from. Hikari shrugs, saying she has no clue and questions how he missed all those buried zombies with his detection spells. Stefan says there wasn't any mana reaction from them, and maybe the noise drew them in. He also asks why she altered the terrain. Kumo jumps in and says there is no time for blame. They just need to wipe these zombies out. He activates his Spirit Kamaitachi skill, letting him tap into a weasel spirit for a bit. Then he starts tearing through the monsters. But things get worse fast. He warns the others that they'll keep coming unless they smash their heads. There are just too many, making it really overwhelming. Hikari points out that her skill needs living souls to keep going, so the leftover corpse bits won't help. She tells Stefan to reach out to his team leader. Stefan snaps back, saying he doesn't have time for that. But with all this chaos, the team leader will probably show up soon anyway. Kumo thinks to himself how tiring it is to smash heads one by one while still being attacked. For those who rely on big area spells, this is a nightmare. If this keeps up, they're not going to last. He has to admit to himself that they're in a pretty bad spot. Out of nowhere, Siwoo appears and blasts the zombies with fire magic, taking them all out like it's nothing. Hikari can't believe it as he hits every single head with pinpoint accuracy, almost like gunfire. She's starting to realize just how strong Siwoo really is, and it's not exactly sitting well with her. Stefan lets out a sigh of relief. He explains that with all the zombies coming from a gate, it makes sense why the team leader's skill couldn't pick up any life signs. For now, he thinks they should fall back and come up with a better plan at dawn. Kumo agrees, saying they should leave the gate for now, just like Siwoo suggested. But Hikari doesn't seem ready to go. Siwoo calls her out, saying she's being stubborn. He warns that pushing forward will only make things messier. She wants to hurry, but she's just wasting her mana. She looks a bit embarrassed about it. Just then, another wave of zombies charges at them. Hikari asks Stefan where his boss is and if he's called him yet. Stefan says he tried, but there was no answer. With all this chaos going on, the boss should have shown up by now. Siwoo gets worried when he finds out he's been left alone. Without wasting any time, he bolts toward Layla's location, telling the others to take care of things while he goes to find her. On the way, he calls up an old buddy and tells him to enter the gate now. The old guy is ready to go and asks what he should do first. Siwoo tells him to track those who went through the gate since they had already entered. From the signs, it looks like one of their own has been grabbed. Meanwhile, Layla is gagged and tied up, realizing she has totally let her guard down. She thought all the entrances were secured, so how did these guys get in? One of the kidnappers wants to kill her, but her fierce stare freaks him out. The boss steps in to stop him, saying they need her as bait if they want to take out everyone involved in one go. He warns the guy not to screw it up like last time. If they pull this off, their group, Almacht, is going to rule the black market in the area. The boss lays it out. In a world where strength matters, a lot of low-tier hunters would pay a crazy amount for this powder. If they play their cards right, Almacht could really step up. He tells the guy to keep his cool. The subordinate, clearly impressed by the drug's power, wonders how much longer they'll have to hide and take orders from someone else. The boss snaps at him, calling him Robert, and tells him to watch his tone. Then, another guy shows up with a scar on his face and a hand oozing black blood. As that blood hits the ground, zombies start to rise around him. The bonehead tries to cover his dripping arm, and as we get a good look at this creepy dude, the boss mentions that this guy is a necromancer. Necromancy is a creepy skill that messes with life and death, and most people totally hate it. It's so sketchy that anyone who has it becomes a target for fear and anger. Even those who've done some seriously messed up stuff avoid it. One dude watching all this thinks he's seen it all in shady places, but he wonders if this necromancer can even be called human. Still, he needs this guy's connections to bring back the Almacht organization, which his father ditched. One of his lackeys finds a vial and asks if it's the drug. He's practically begging for just a tiny sip. Furious boss warns him that if he wants to end up like those poor souls outside the gate, go ahead. Just one dose can boost a hunter's skill to S rank, but you can't stop once you start. The addict's body will overload and blow up. It's a drug that burns like fire, quick and deadly. The boss has witnessed its horrors firsthand and wonders how it's made. Even detection skills can't catch it. Where is it coming from? Then we find out the necromancer's name is Ivan. The boss greets him, claiming they're in the same boat now, and he must know the drug's source. Ivan smirks, saying the boss can't even handle his clueless subordinates. The drug incident has caught the eye of the International Investigation Agency, and now he wants details on the supply chain? The boss defends himself, saying things like this are bound to happen in the drug business. Ivan mocks him, calling him bold and shameless, which he finds amusing but still won't share the source. If their clueless captain lets slip any info to his even dumber subordinates, it'll be a disaster. Robert is irritated and accuses Ivan of disrespecting the captain, but the boss raises a hand to cool things down. A girl chimes in, saying their noise is scaring the investigators, and asks Ivan if she guessed right. Her name is Crow, and Ivan notices her presence and asks what she's doing there. Crow thinks Ivan is messing around and warns him against actions that could endanger the entire anti-demon group for the IZ Guild's sake. Ivan chuckles, guessing their cautious leader put her up to it. He tells Crow to pass along a simple message: wipe them all out. Crow responds that Ivan only knows how to play with corpses, so he doesn't get how people work. Their bonds are strong and dangerously unpredictable. She glances at Layla and hints that she could be a problem. Ivan says he'll let her live for now, at least until they deal with everyone else. Crow clarifies she's not talking about Layla, but about Ivan himself. She warns him it might be too late and urges him to think carefully. Are they really on the same side? Then she uses magic and disappears. Ivan snaps, calling him a coward who always watches from the sidelines. Robert turns to the captain and asks who she is, but the boss tells him to be quiet and says it's better to act like they haven't seen anything. He adds that the tied-up woman and the investigators outside aren't making it through the night. Meanwhile, Hikari's group has taken out the zombies. Stefan says even if they chase recklessly, the path is littered with zombie remains, and it'd be risky if Hunter Siwoo didn't clear the way. He thinks it'd be smarter to head back and ask for reinforcements, but Hikari refuses, saying they need to keep going. She can't handle losing like this. Her brother tries to calm her down. Suddenly Siwoo shows up and asks why they're following him. Hikari questions why he's going solo. Stefan asks what happened to the team leader, and Siwoo responds that she's not where she was. He senses a faint mana response, suggesting she's been captured. Kumo asks who took her. Siwoo explains it's the summoner behind the zombies. Stefan can't believe it. No way the team leader got caught that easily. Siwoo challenges him, asking if he thinks all those zombies just showed up alone. If Stefan is scared, he can stay behind and catch anyone trying to escape, but they all end up chasing after him. Stefan asks if that means the zombie summoner and the kidnapper are inside. Siwoo replies maybe, and that he's already dealt with 4 guards in the area. Suddenly, Hikari catches a terrible smell. Kumo thinks the stench is worse than expected. Stefan comments on how their team leader ended up in a place like this. It looks like they've arrived. One of the kidnappers steps forward, mocking them and saying they saved him the trouble of searching since they came right to him. Kumo charges ahead, accusing them of wearing out his sister. Robert sneers at them, calling them mannerless brats, wasting taxpayers' money. Normally, he'd introduce himself, but he's ready to take them down. Zombies back him up, and the boss warns the intruders they're in for a rough time. A total brawl kicks off, and Siwoo fights to protect the girl. Hikari's all confused by the yellow energy swirling around her, lifting her to safety. Ivan thinks it is pretty wild that someone is actually using necromancy. He cannot exactly criticize, since he is into it too. Kumo is livid and charges Ivan while his friends shout that the fight is still going on. Kumo throws a massive punch, but Robert's defensive magic completely blocks it. Siwoo realizes they've got way too many enemies to deal with. Frey chimes in that Ivan's way stronger than your average human. Siwoo agrees, pointing out Ivan's been prepping for this from the get-go. They're in a tight spot, and it won't be easy. Ivan teases Siwoo about his guts, asking if he's strong enough to be useful. Siwoo then pulls out the slicing wind skill, whipping up green, deadly tornadoes that wipe out the zombies instantly. Ivan's impressed, and wonders what kind of life Siwoo's lived to be this strong, while calling him some kind of monster that preys on his own kind. He starts gathering more energy. Black energy erupts from the zombies, and more gross ones appear, making Frey sick. Siwoo decides it's time for a full-on attack since their numbers are getting out of hand. He unleashes Thunderbolt, zapping the zombies and roasting them on the spot. Ivan's blown away by Siwoo's mana control, but Siwoo shoots back that he's more shocked that someone like Ivan can talk so clearly. Ivan gets angry, saying trash is a harsh label. He claims he doesn't use the powder, and puts it down as junk for losers. He mocks those who can't use mana without someone else's gate, saying a human hired him for this mission, and finds it funny to feast on his own kind. He proclaims it's a noble mission to help scum like that be reborn, believing humans are at their finest when they die, especially those dependent on the powder. They make for excellent material. Siwoo senses there's no disturbance in Ivan's demonic energy, which means he's not lying. So someone else must be making that illegal enhancement drug. He retorts that Ivan's noble mission stinks, calling it gross and pathetic, and asks if Ivan doesn't feel ashamed. Ivan counters that he doesn't expect anyone to get it, but it hurts. He tells his creations to kill, make more, and keep killing. As long as the moon's out, he's got tons of mana. They're still battling the zombies and kidnappers, fighting off monsters, keeping an eye out for stragglers, and checking on the injured. Ivan taunts Siwoo, asking how long he can keep up that smug attitude before wounding him with black magic. Siwoo grabs his injured arm and casually says, half-demons don't use mana, they use magic. Ivan is taken aback, and while Siwoo heals his wound with magic and asks if Ivan is a half-demon, a cursed bloodline shunned by both demons and humans and stuck between two worlds. He points out that Ivan lies while using that nasty power and then asks who is the real mutt now. Ivan laughs but starts to tremble a bit. He releases a surge of demonic energy and curses the humans. Frey notes that the energy is super dense and warns Siwoo that this could roll badly. Siwoo responds confidently that even if Ivan's power has risen, his attacks are easier to predict now. He thinks he can deal with it as long as those cursed bugs don't get summoned. But if this keeps up, he'll have to go all out. He checks with Frey, and she warns him not to push too hard. Siwoo jokes that he's just ramping up his previous move and teases that she looks scared, saying this is actually getting fun and he's feeling pumped. Siwoo activates the Tamer skill, and chains burst from a magic circle gripping the zombies. Stefan's shocked to see them stop moving. Robert and his boss wonder what's going on with the zombies. Kumo figures it out and announces that the zombies are being controlled now. They turn and start attacking their own side, leaving the enemy group stunned and demanding Ivan do something. Frustrated, Ivan snaps back, saying no one can dominate all the undead at once, and thinks the whole situation is too ridiculous to even laugh at. Then he zeroes in on Siwoo and asks who he really is. He demands to know if Siwoo is even human. Siwoo stays chill and says the experience was intense, maybe because he raised his output a bit. Frey groans and says she feels like tossing her cookies. Siwoo tells her to take a breather and that he'll handle the fight. He tells the zombies to go after their dad. The zombies charge at Ivan, who struggles a bit with their numbers. Suddenly, a huge explosion rocks the place. Ivan declares the game over. He's not holding back anymore. Out of nowhere, Siwoo pops up behind him, asking if there's anything else he's hiding. Ivan's eyes go wide, seeing Siwoo activate the acceleration skill. Siwoo gets ready to attack and thanks Ivan for breaking the wall. He charges up a powerful magic, and another massive explosion goes off. But luck's on Ivan's side. Crow swoops in to save him. Crow smiles and says it's been a minute. Siwoo mentions he thought Crow wouldn't step in, and taking down Ivan seemed like a lot. Crow says she's more important than she looks, and if she's no longer useful, Siwoo can do what he wants. But for now, she wants to let it go since she's not looking to tangle with someone as strong as him. Siwoo thinks Crow is different from the others and linked to the drug trade. With her attitude, she could be a problem down the road. He considers dealing with her now but realizes there are bigger fish to fry. Plus, the woman's clearly stronger than the necromancer. So he asks her who leads the anti-demon clan and how someone like that gets mixed up in this shady business. Crow explains that Siwoo knows a decent amount about them, but he's got it twisted. The moderate faction is in control now. It all kicked off independently because of that kid who used their name to score jobs. Crow claims she doesn't even know who's calling the shots. Siwoo challenges her, asking if she's really saying they got involved just because someone pulled them in without knowing the mastermind. Crow clarifies that they got mixed up to keep the kid alive. They only just found out what he was up to. She admits Siwoo probably has a ton of questions but says she genuinely doesn't know much. Siwoo glances at his exhausted crew and decides that it's not a huge deal if the necromancer isn't the main culprit. Still, he warns Crow not to expect a second chance. Crow is surprised that Siwoo trusts her so easily. He speaks up and says he read Crow's mana pattern. When she lies, the wave changes. Crow looks a bit annoyed and calls it dull. Siwoo asks one last thing. Who is this we she keeps mentioning? Crow finally reveals their name IZ, and then she vanishes. Siwoo thinks about how the anti-demon clan isn't directly involved. If it was just about cash, the bad guys wouldn't have picked the anti-demon clan, which is naturally against humans. That drug gives off a weird power, but it's not demonic energy. It's something unknown, something Siwoo hasn't seen, even in another world. He decides he'll check it out later. He heads back to his group. Layla thanked him for saving everyone and said she felt ashamed as the team leader. She suggests they bounce since they've been hanging around too long. Stefan tells her not to overdo it. Siwoo thinks that cleaning up is the priority now. Hikari approaches and calls Siwoo, the necromancer. He explains that the enemies dipped out and it was an ambush. Layla also says she's sorry for being careless. Kumo chimes in that what matters is everyone is safe. First, they should get out of the gate and reassess. Siwoo thinks about why he prefers to work solo. Even though he's not truly on his own, someone's always with him. Frey. He tries calling out for him, but Frey doesn't respond. 2 days later, at HMCS headquarters, Edward reviews Siwoo's report about the zombies and the necromancer at the gate. Edward says he's never heard of that before and doubts Siwoo's claim that they weren't the culprits. Siwoo responds that this is just the tip of the iceberg based on what they said. Edward kicks himself for underestimating the situation. He thought it was just a routine field check. He admits he really owes Siwoo one. Siwoo stays calm, saying no one could have predicted this, not even the ones in charge. They're lucky nobody got seriously hurt. Edward gives Siwoo props and says everyone can get back to work, especially Hikari, who is in real danger. He jokes that the old wild dog still has some fight left in him. Siwoo shrugs and asks if there's anything else to do. He wants to head back to Korea and tells Edward to hit him up if anything comes up. Edward tries to get him to at least say goodbye to the others, but Siwoo declines, saying he's busy. Outside, he runs into Hikari. She tells him she just wanted to thank him for healing her, and she never got the chance to say it. She admits she didn't even go all out during the mission, but promises to be more helpful next time. Siwoo just responds indifferently, and then takes off. He starts thinking about Frey again. Since that day, he hasn't heard from him. Still, he has no problem using the skills that depend on his power. At HMCS Central HQ, a woman brings an update to Edward. The Middle East team discovered that a group called Al-Maqt attacked the investigation crew and was linked to the illegal drug trade in the area. They don't produce the drugs, but with their leader gone, their supply chain has taken a hit. Some members are still active in the black market, so they have to keep tracking them down. Edward inquires about the gate's condition, and she mentions it's pretty damaged from the fighting. The report highlights its strategic value, and that efforts to close it are already in progress. Edward notes that the situation is complicated. If the former chairman's faction blames them for the damage, it could lead to some issues. That faction has most of Central HQ under their control, especially the key players. Cargill Hwan, a semi-special rank hunter, is eyeing Edward's position and will likely try to meddle in this case, so they must avoid giving him any fuel. Before she wraps up, someone barges into the room without knocking. It's Cargill Hwan, the very person they were just talking about. He greets Edward and casually mentions it's been a while. He brings up the illegal enhancement drug investigation and comments that the results seem pretty underwhelming. Edward asks what he's getting at. Cargill drops a rumor that Edward put a foreign hunter from Asia on the investigation team. According to the gossip, the team returned empty-handed, with damage to show for it. Edward defends himself, saying that the team was attacked at the gate but managed to take down their assailants. Cargill counters that the group they found was small, and there's no information about their distribution network or where the drugs are coming from. He speculates that Edward wouldn't send in an unknown parachute hunter without a solid reason. He insists that the investigation is dragging on too long and suggests making it public, pointing out that going public might just pique the interest of regular folks about the drugs. He asks if Cargill is ready for the fallout. Cargill claims they can manage the situation if they shut down the source quickly. He thinks those in the know probably already have a handle on it. Without going fully public, he wants to hear what the other semi-special rank hunters think. He's curious about where their support would land. Edward looks a bit annoyed and calls Siwoo, mentioning that the investigation might go public, which could create problems in various countries. Siwoo reminds him that time isn't on their side. Edward agrees and expresses his desire to wrap things up himself, though he acknowledges that the case is more complicated than he expected. Meanwhile, Siri is chatting with an old man, asking if they really managed to capture the necromancer. He confirms that he saw it with his own eyes. Edward and Siwoo keep chatting. Edward mentions they're still tracking Pandemonium and IZ, but it's taking a while. Siwoo is cool with it. He hasn't yet expected much progress. Edward brings up the gate. After Siwoo got back, they sent a big team to check it out. Just like Siwoo said, the gate doesn't match what they thought it was. There were tons of corpses out front when they found it, which probably gave it that high rating. Most gates are empty after being raided, but this one only has zombies. Even if some illegal farming went down, necromancers and Al-Maqt members probably cleaned it up. Edward asks Siwoo for his thoughts. Siwoo suggests that kind of gate is like a dimensional gap. It just pops up randomly and doesn't follow any space rules. Using it for drug smuggling would be impossible for even the best shamans. Unless it's not a real gate, maybe it's just a space made to look like one for smuggling. Edward thinks that's a bit of a stretch, but Siwoo says he's just throwing out ideas. Edward compliments Siwoo's instincts and says he'll look into it, asking him to keep helping out since he still has investigative authority. Siwoo nods in agreement. Then Siwoo shows up and asks if he's ready for a 3-on-1 spar. The older guy tells him to chill since he looks worn out, but Siwoo is down. He just wants to stretch a bit. Siri pipes up, pretending her stomach hurts and wanting to sit out. The old dude stops her, saying if one person drops out, it could be life or death for all of them. Siwoo thinks a little warm-up is fine and hopes Frey will wake up soon. In a busy restaurant, a guy with a neck tattoo heads over to a guarded room. He says he's got business inside, and the guard gives him a code. Shadow has no color, he says. The guy replies, only crimson blood resembles them. The guard lets him in. Inside, a man with glasses says it's been a while. The tattooed guy asks if everything's all good. The guy with glasses replies it's fine and asks if the saint showed up. The tattooed guy explains that because the drug crackdown in Korea is getting tighter, they're holding off on traveling for now. After this deal, they're pausing the trade for a bit. The guy with glasses nods and says they've assigned a bodyguard for his trip back. Someone drops in from above and lights the tattooed guy's cigarette. He appreciates the gesture and mentions he doesn't plan on heading back soon since there's a lot to sort out after this deal. With the new stock coming in, things are bound to get messy. He also adds that the police have been super aggressive lately, and he has no clue why. Then someone appears and says the tattooed guy is already there. His name is Zhang Qian-A and he's wearing a mask. The tattooed guy greets him, commenting on his punctuality. He turns to Chu, the glasses guy, and asks about the goods. Q apologizes for trusting him with such a big shipment, but their distribution in Korea keeps getting messed up. The Grand Saint insists he go through with it. Jang says that's cool since his job is to make sure everything gets sold. He pulls out a suitcase and asks if they want to check it. He opens it to show what's inside: illegal goods. The scene shifts to the HMCS Korea branch, where Siwoo is focused on his computer. Two co-workers stroll up to him, and one remarks how the man is really here today. The other chimes in about Hunter Min, explaining he's been sent to HQ for a special mission. That clears up why the deputy director dropped by earlier. They start speculating about whether Siwoo has some connections, or if he slipped in through an insider route. The team leader walks over, asking if Siwoo's seen the latest directive. Siwoo immediately asks if it's about the probe into illegal power-enhancing drugs for awakeners, and whether there's been any announcement yet. The team leader confirms the HQ trip is tied to this, and the mission is connected as well. Even though it's top secret, they should have at least given a heads up. The branch chief isn't even in the loop, and now it's total chaos across all branches. Siwoo explains that he got strict orders to keep things under wraps, so he just did what he was told. He wonders why everyone's so worked up. The team leader replies that Siwoo is making them look bad. They had to ask regular staff for help since no one knew what was happening. It would be manageable if only the staff were kept in the dark, but the team leaders are aware he's been to HQ too. Just then, someone shouts that the branch chief wants to see them, including Hunter Siwoo. They head over together. The branch chief fills them in that HQ sent out an order for a big international investigation focusing on illegal power-enhancing drugs for awakeners. The black market is spreading these faster than they anticipated. He mentions that Siwoo confirmed this during his trip, then expresses concern over why HQ is putting so much pressure on the Korea branch and what's really going on. They both think to themselves that they're being targeted. It seems absurd to have such high expectations when Korea is already clean regarding illegal drugs. What more could they want from such a small country? They also realize that they're not being contacted by the deputy director, but someone connected to the former chairman's faction. One of them remarks that getting blacklisted would ruin any chances for a promotion. Siwoo quips sarcastically if he should quit. The chief insists no way. Whatever happens, even if Siwoo gets promoted and sent to HQ, he needs to remember where he came from, the Korea branch. The chief points out that they need to make the Korean branch shine during this investigation. He informs the team leader that his gangbuk team is now the special task force for tackling illegal drugs targeting awakeners. The team leader looks shocked. The chief warns that if they mess up, the entire Korean branch's reputation will suffer. Other teams will pitch in with investigations, but the gangbuk team will take care of the main targets and key areas. He tells them to see this as an opportunity for promotions. The team leader mentions others will definitely complain. The chief shrugs it off, saying no one cares about that stuff. He tells Siwoo that if HQ asks for more help, he'll approve it instantly. Until then, Siwoo will also handle the domestic investigation. Siwoo gets it. This is their first case as a new task force. The chief instructed them to get started right away and told the other teams to gather all suspicious new cases. Everyone looks pretty worn out. He mentions reports of suspicious activity at a big abandoned warehouse on Manhwa Island. It's long been a hotspot for addicts, but now a bunch of foreigners are showing up. It's turning into a distribution center with people from other towns coming in. Several criminal awakeners are brawling in the area, with plenty of casualties and clashes still going on. The team leader expresses concern that this might be too big for their team to handle alone. The chief reassures him, saying he's already contacted a private guild for backup. They're fully briefed and don't need HQ's approval, so they should just focus on getting results. Siwoo wonders about this private guild. The scene shifts, showing Siwoo meeting with Yoa and her younger brother. He asks if they sent the request for help. Yoa confirms she did, and asks who else he thought it would be. Sejun chimes in, asking why Yoa always gets tangled up in these big messes. Siwoo looks at the guildmasters and points out they could have sent some underlings if they were too busy. Sejun insists he didn't come just for kicks, and Yoa adds that a master's duties come first. Then Sejun asks if Siwoo is rolling solo and where his team is. Siwoo explains that his crew is on guard outside because bringing too many folks inside would just raise red flags. Yoa mentions they're all on high alert and ready to catch anyone trying to bolt. Siwoo remarks that most people inside are probably just regular folks looking for awakener meds, and the chaos is likely between dealers or their security. He suggests heading towards the trading center. Sejun warns that rushing in could blow their chances of gathering important intel. He thinks they should disguise themselves and scope things out first. Yoa disagrees and wants to go in swinging. Siwoo is taken aback and surprised that these experienced folks are debating like this. As they bicker, Siwoo hears some guy saying that big groups are always bad news. He expected a lot more action but ended up finding the same old mess, just more crowded. He's frustrated, pointing fingers at awakeners for making their own drugs, saying it's gross, but he doesn't care if it sells. Another guy asks if he has any self-respect. The first guy retorts that he's been at this for 15 years. Siwoo and the crew overhear someone warning the older dude that he'll be in big trouble if he keeps this up. The old guy then mentions that Jang Chuian is in Korea now, which is why he's hanging around. Siwoo steps in and asks about Jang Chuian. The two men jump, asking who he is. They tell him to hit the front if he wants to buy drugs. Siwoo shoots back, saying they're not there to buy anything, and calls them addicts before striding in with his group. The next shot shows the two guys tied up. As the door gets smashed open, Siwoo's debating whether to act like an addict or just take everyone down. Yeowa's cool with either choice. Sejun tells him to stick close. Then, Sejun whips out a magic staff and uses a skill called Hide. It's a light magic trick that bends what you see, making him invisible. How long and strong it lasts really depends on how skilled he is. Siwoo realizes it's a transformation-type artifact in magic. Yeowa calls it invisible magic and says she now understands why people call Sejun Korea's Grey Mage. She even admits she had no clue he could do this. Sejun goes on about how his skill is elemental magic, and with enough practice and creativity, there's a ton you can do with it. He breaks down that the hide spell uses light to mess with visibility and hide your body. Siwoo thinks it sounds like freeform magic and gets excited, wishing he could learn it too. Sejun then asks about the guest inside Siwoo, and if he's dipped out somewhere. Sejun brushes it off as nothing to stress about and tells Siwoo he's really grown up. He pats him on the head, but Sejun rolls his eyes and tells him to stop treating him like a kid. Yeowa playfully chimes in, saying what about her since she's been putting in hard work too. Siwoo just sighs, saying they should wrap this up so they can head home sooner. As they walk into the building, they start hearing chatter. One person's griping about the prices being way too high. The place is packed with addicts, most of them looking like regular civilians who aren't awakened. Even if the term civilian doesn't quite fit, they're still criminals. There's probably a separate black market just for awakeners, which would be tricky to find, but listening to the talks here might give them some clues. Yeowa mentions that the place is way bigger than she thought, and just catching someone here would already be a major win. But Sejun points out that catching small fries isn't really going to change much. They just bounce back with bail or probation. Taking down one market doesn't mean much unless they get to the big players behind the drugs. Out of nowhere, someone rushes in, screaming. As he bolts for the exit, one of the onlookers asks what's up. Another guy says the runner looks like he's tripping or going through withdrawal and grumbles that junkies shouldn't go berserk underground. He makes a snarky comment about sewer rats always acting like this. Someone else jokes that maybe the place has a bad vibe. Yeowa says the place gives her the creeps and might actually be a hideout for some weirdos. Siwoo tells the others to hang tight while he goes in alone. Sejun wants to tag along, but Siwoo tells him to just wait quietly. As Siwoo steps into a different section, he realizes he's stumbled into an underground canal system, made for sneaking away when the cops show up. The layout is all twisted and complicated. He senses something off. It's not mana. It feels more like the vibe of some summoned creature, kind of like what he picked up around investigators before. It's not alive, more like a ghost. Suddenly, something ghostly shows up behind him. Siwoo jumps into action, but his mana just goes right through it. The thing isn't threatening or anything. Siwoo figures that ghost is the best way to describe it. Out of nowhere, a girl appears and tells him not to attack her buddy. Siwoo is taken aback. She can actually see him. She asks who he is, and he throws the question back at her, pointing out that she doesn't belong here. She tells him that this place is her home. Siwoo is confused and asks if the sewers are really her home. The girl shrugs, saying she can live here, so it's home to her. That's just how she rolls. Still puzzled, Siwoo moves on and asks where her parents are and how she's so bruised. She tells him she doesn't have parents. They ditched her ages ago for some stuff. The bruises? She got those trying to slip out through another exit while looking for food. Siwoo points out that what she did was pretty reckless. He wonders how she can live in such a gross, damp place and even be pals with ghosts. As he heals her, she starts feeling better, and says his power feels incredible. Hers is cold, but he is warm. He asks if she's the one making those ghosts. She replies that her ghost friends aren't her creations. They look after her, alerting her to danger and showing her all the escape routes in this twisted maze. Then he asks for her name. She introduces herself as Sion. Siwoo nods and says he wants help from her friends. He needs to find out which exits are linked to the bad guys with those strange powers. Sion happily agrees to pitch in. Meanwhile, a shady dude is dealing drugs in a different spot. The buyer's curious if it's the real deal, and the dealer confidently says it's 100% pure, straight from the source. No mixing. Just one hit, he claims, and even a B-rank hunter will be a piece of cake. The red-haired guy wants to make sure it's legit, so the dealer insists it's limited stock and super hard to get. The redhead asks about any side effects, and the dealer assures him it's clean with nearly no addiction risk, meant to be used just when necessary. He also reminds the buyer not to spread the word, explaining that this deal is going down in a construction site basement for a reason. Suddenly they hear a weird noise. One of them brushes it off, saying it's probably just a rat, while another guy talks about some strange stuff happening lately in the sewer paths. Out of nowhere, the red-haired guy flinches when something brushes against his face and bolts in fear. Siwoo and Cyan are standing in front of them. Siwoo clarifies he's not a ghost, but a human. Then, he uses his magic to slam the drug dealers against the wall. He tells Cyan to hide for now and promises to call her when it's safe, thanking her for helping him find the place. Siwoo then accuses the dealers of hogging all the good stuff for themselves and teases one of them about not getting up after he threw them. He checks out the drugs, confirming they really have finally arrived in Korea. But then someone sneaks up and hits Siwoo from behind. A couple of other guys join in, wondering how this little rat got in. The boss thinks there might be a traitor in the bunch since it's the first shipment from the factory and orders Unit 4 to contact Unit 0 to take care of the intruder. While standing on the knocked-out hero, Siwoo quickly snaps back, activates his counterattack skill, and unleashes a wide-area attack. The guys get blasted back but manage to block it, and the boss doesn't even budge. Siwoo assesses the situation, noting these opponents are fast, strong, and clearly trained. He asks who sent them. The boss is starting to realize that Siwoo's skills and how he healed from the attack show he's no rookie. Another guy sneers at Siwoo for pretending to be dead, but Siwoo fires back, saying hiding in the ceiling is pretty cowardly too. They demand to know which guild Siwoo belongs to. Before they can react, Siwoo uses his magic to immobilize two of them and tells them not to move. He declares he'll be the one asking the questions, and they're better off answering. The boss tries to keep things chill, saying Siwoo is a bit too excited. He figures Siwoo came because of some rumors, then tries to use a skill. He tells Siwoo to get in line if he wants to buy something and launches an attack. Siwoo releases the two guys he caught and, grinning, says he wouldn't take the drugs even if they were free. The boss asks his crew for a damage report, and Siwoo activates his defensive skill, ready to engage in a little strength test. The enemies groan in pain, one complaining he's bleeding too much to even use a skill, and that he's broken 3 ribs. Realizing they can't hold up, one of them pushes the other to show their resolve. Together, they down some potions and suddenly power up, claiming they're going to crush Siwoo to dust and telling him to just die already as they launch another coordinated attack. Siwoo notices how fast their strength is increasing. One of them yells that he's about to blast a hole through Siwoo's head and tries a skill called Cross Bloom. Siwoo barely manages to dodge it. He can't help but mutter that their power is on another level and wonders if they really can't fight without the stuff. Their frustration is clear as they keep missing him. Finally, one of them traps Siwoo in a mana box with a skill. Siwoo realizes there's still one more enemy, and this one looks way too confident. He warns them that he's got them now and says this is the end for them. He calls for Unit 4 and Unit 10 to come help take him down. Just then, Yowa crashes in and unleashes her skill, Windflower Wave. Flames hit the boss right in the face. She gives Siwoo a hard time for always making her chase him and says it's time for them to join the fight too. After they dealt with the attackers, Yowa stretches and says they're tough but still not a match for an S rank. The drug gave them a boost, but it wasn't enough. The attackers are groaning on the floor. Siwoo asks how they got there so quickly. Sejun explains that Yowa suddenly ran downstairs, saying she had to follow him. Yowa tries to argue but ends up admitting it wasn't her plan. A little girl led her. She points to Cyan at the door, who smiles proudly and says she turned it into a fair 3-on-3 fight instead of a one-sided beatdown. Siwoo walks over and thanks her for the help. Watching them, Yowa asks who the girl is. Siwoo says it's complicated but promises to fill her in later. Sejun chimes in, saying a kid shouldn't be living in a place like this. As he looks around and spots the illegal drug, he mentions it's finally made its way to Korea. He'd heard about it, but this is the first time he's seen someone actually using it. At least the guy didn't blow up right away. Yowa thinks the user must have gotten a burst of strength by gradually increasing the dose, but the side effects probably messed up his body and led to death. Siwoo then asks if they've heard of the zombie slayers. Sejun shakes his head, guessing the attackers were just hired muscle for the exchange. Siwoo disagrees, saying they were too strong for that. Solid A-rank hunters used to kill. He figures they were sent from the source of the illegal drugs, maybe a group like Bestia that does assassinations. Sejun notes that if it's Bestia, then they might be linked to the guy Minjun mentioned, and Pandemonium too. He thinks that guy could suspect demons are involved as well. Siwoo agrees but treats it as just a hunch. With Pandemonium and artificial gates, it feels like this is all some kind of human-made power. He wonders if someone from the underworld is teaming up with demons and causing all this. While clearing the bodies, Yowa points out it's weird how the Mad Dog has vanished from public view over the last decade. He was still one of Korea's top players. She adds that if any of this checks out, things could really escalate and spark another war between humans and demons. Siwoo agrees and mentions that these guys had markers on each other, so there might be at least 10 of them. While checking the bodies, he realizes 2 of the attackers are still alive, so they'll be taken to prison for questioning. Just then, Cyan feels something off and warns the others that a serious threat is coming their way. She darts off towards it while Sejun and Yoa tense up. Out of nowhere, a huge explosion goes off, and Siwoo quickly yanks Sion back to safety. The intruder turns out to be Q. He spots the fallen guards and starts scolding them, saying if they're going to do a job, they need to finish it properly. He warns that those who leave a mess don't stick around for long. Pressing his fingers together, he's ready to show them what he didn't get back in the day. He's got a whole team behind him, gearing up for a fight. Siwoo's crew takes their positions. He eyes the enemies and wonders if they're the last of the numbered ones. He's curious if they come in even in odd groups. Sejun activates his stealth skill and notices that Mana feels different. These guys are at least A rank, way stronger than before. A hero steps forward, calling them drug dealers, and asks if Chu is the boss. Q freezes, feeling the pressure, and wonders if these are the heads of the Azure Blossom Guild. He's unsure how much they know. He doesn't recognize the one in the middle, but the other two are definitely S rank. He decides it's time to take them out. He signals to his team that he figures there's no need to chat. As they grab the drugs, Chu announces he'll finish them off right here, and they all charge at Siwoo's group. Sejun tells the others to let him handle the enemies while Yoa covers them with her bow. The fight breaks out, with Siwoo going after Chu and the others tackling the rest of the guild. As they clash, Siwoo notices Chu's martial arts look familiar, but kind of sloppy, making him wonder if Chu's teacher is just a fraud. Chu gets furious and unleashes a surge of power. He roars at Siwoo, sending him flying with a powerful spell. Yoa, completely taken by surprise, shoots an arrow that hits Chu. He's caught off guard but manages to use magic to send it back her way, hitting her hard. An enemy tries to sneak up on Yoa, but Sejun jumps in and takes down two attackers with his magic, telling her to deal with the smaller threats first. As Siwoo gets back on his feet, Sejun urges him to stay strong and hold his ground. Siwoo starts to realize Chu is using some weird technique against him. Instead of getting frustrated, he remembers the crazy rush of fighting with his team. Messy, wild, perfectly chaotic. He tells the others to take a breather for a bit, saying it will take him about 10 minutes to finish things up. While talking, he begins gathering a massive amount of magical energy. The battle heats up as Siwoo and Chu go at it. Blow after blow, Siwoo begins to overpower him, landing a solid hit to Chu's face that leaves him bruised. Siwoo notices Q's been relying on big attacks from the start. He asks if that heavy right-handed punch is part of his main skills. Q tries that same mana-infused punch again, but this time Siwoo is ready. He's figured out that Chu absorbs the enemy's energy and reflects it back, so he sets up a perfect counter. As their attacks are about to clash, Chu suddenly realizes he's made a mistake. Siwoo grins after the hit and tells Chu that his friend won't be using that technique anymore. Chu jumped back, shocked that someone he thought was just a kid had reached the level of Azura. Our hero charged forward, filled with magical energy. He explained that it was no mystery, as he had created the technique. With a strong strike, he sent Chu tumbling. As Chu tried to recover, the hero attacked again with a charged hand, but Chu barely managed to dodge. The hero continued, saying that those who relied only on awakening skills could never understand mana. He explained that mana controlled the chi center and could take many forms. Azura was just one of those forms, but he hadn't expected it to evolve into a full clan. Q realized he was losing and needed time to escape. He saw a companion slammed into a wall and told them to take the lead to buy time, but the hero was already behind him and closed in quickly. Q got caught and was thrown into a narrow corner, hitting the wall hard. A vial fell from his hand as he landed. The hero approached and said Chu had a chance to cooperate and even received answers. Since he stayed silent, it was now the hero's turn to ask. He grabbed Chu's face and asked if he had ever listened. Q trembled. The hero questioned why he was resisting when his own men took the drug without hesitation. Wasn't this the product Chu was proud of? He insisted that Chu must know what it really was and refused to take it. If Chu wanted to live, he had to reveal who made it and spread it. Q used that moment to drink the vial. He declared that nothing they did mattered anymore. In a world run by awakened skills, only the strong survive. To grow stronger, people must take anything, whether it's medicine or poison. Shady deals didn't matter because drugs like this would keep appearing. The hero remained silent as Chu yelled that the weak were meant to be consumed and that shining for even a moment was a blessing. The hero grabbed Chu by the neck and slammed him down, asking what kind of nonsense he was saying. Even if his logic made sense, he was still weaker. He let go and Chu coughed blood and collapsed, exhausted. The hero warned him to speak before the drug took control. Who made and spread the illegal enhancement drugs? The scene shifted to Sejun, who asked his sister if it was normal for their brother to have changed so much in 10 years. She agreed, saying he was now stronger and more ruthless. Sejun thought that 10 years here felt like 100 in their other world. Living that long in a place where nobody knew him must have changed him. But Sejun felt it was more than that. It seemed their brother had lost something that made him feel less human. Still, he believed he would find it again someday. The hero had been listening quietly. He asked what Sejun thought he had lost. Sejun brushed it off and asked if the hero had found anything useful. The hero replied that he hadn't learned much. The drug had been released across regions at once, and the main hub in Asia seemed to be in China. If Q had shared more, he likely would have exploded due to a mana oath or a similar contract. Sejun suggested they return because Mr. Jonggu might have found more information outside. On the way back, he asked what to do about the child. His sister said to look for her parents, and if they couldn't find them, to find someone to take care of her. The hero thought about the bigger issue. If they didn't act quickly, the drugs could spread out of control. The enemy seemed to know the investigation was getting close. The abandoned factory might be a trap. If China were the main hub, there would have to be a local center in Korea too. Next, the scene shifts to a busy club where people dance under bright lights. Music blasts through the air as a tattooed man leans toward his friend and asks about the abandoned factory. His friend replies that HMCS forces have surrounded and raided it. Because of this operation, most people linked to Sir Louis and the Oni Slayer group are now out of contact. The tattooed man then asks about Chu. A blonde man answers that Mr. Q is very worried because he hasn't been able to reach his twin brother, Sir Louis. Still, Q is following orders from Sir Daesung. The tattooed man mutters to himself that he plans to return the next day. Suddenly his phone rings. He answers and hears Daesung asking if there are any problems with the transaction in Korea. The tattooed man replies that they started operations in different areas as instructed. It seems the targets realized the goods were fake. Daesung responds that they were the ones who told HMCS agents about it. The tattooed man gets frustrated and asks what that means. Daesung explains that since the drugs are already spread throughout the country, it's normal for a few exchanges to fail. Now that HMCS has taken the bait, they will focus their investigation on the abandoned factory. Clown will handle distribution, so he should keep sending out the product, even if it's risky. The tattooed man warns that acting so openly will get them caught. He mentions that Louis at the factory and the Oni Slayers are still missing. Daesung tells him not to worry. Everyone involved signed strict confidentiality contracts. Even if they get caught, they cannot reveal anything. He adds that the useful hunters in Korea all died 10 years ago. Daesung gives one last order. Just protect a place called Despair. That is all he needs to do. At the HMCS branch office, Young reported that many distributors and users were arrested at an abandoned factory and destroyed the entire sales site. Normally, this would be a big win, but the operation resulted in all those involved in the drug trade being killed since the users were too far gone to save. They recovered a significant amount of the original drug and confirmed that the distribution network started in China, which was a major discovery. The branch chief said the information was weak and asked if that was really everything they had. Young responded, asking what else they could do and if they should complain to the Empire or the guild master who assisted them. The chief then asked about the other teams. Young told him they were still searching but had no real leads. A blue-haired agent mentioned that the culprits were hiding. Another agent said the southern team found one user but faced heavy resistance and had to retreat. The chief became angry and questioned whether they could even do their jobs. Jung quietly remarked that they weren't sure the drug was spreading since they were overwhelmed with daily awakener crimes. The branch chief's anger grew. He said they acted as if HQ had made everything up and reminded them that the situation in Japan was already chaotic. He emphasized that all eyes were on Korea now. Even if they got the drug, they couldn't analyze it and had to send it to HQ. He questioned if they planned to accuse China with no proof, and if he was supposed to show up at the international meeting with nothing to report. The team complained that he always blamed HQ and just wanted a promotion. They said chasing the big shot rookie had made their situation worse. The chief snapped and asked where Hunter Min was. They replied that he had taken the day off to handle some matters. The scene shifted to the hero. Yowa asked him if he liked something. He said he did, but wondered if it was okay to accept it. She assured him it was since he had raised them, and it was the least they could do. Sejun mentioned it made sense for him to have his own place now with so many people living together. He recalled how the hero and others used to sleep at the office, and how even Hunter Chu visited often. He also reminded him that he had taken the kid in. The hero, holding Cyan's hand, said he had looked for a place, but it would be hard for her to fit in since she was a natural awakener. Yowa patted Cyan's head and noted that such talent was rare without going through the tutorial tower. She told Cyan to listen to the hero and promised to visit every day. Cyan smiled and said the pretty head lady was nice. Sejun said he would come every day. Even though he moved in with his sister, he spent so much time here that it felt like a second home. Yowa laughed and invited Cyan to come inside and look around with his big sister. The hero looked at them, half laughing, and asked if this was their plan from the start. He smiled and said this would be their new hideout. He remembered the joy and laughter when they first moved in and got the biggest room. Fishin had promised he didn't just choose a random house as an excuse because of the war. The hero agreed, saying he figured that out since he could never afford a place like this. Daesung complained about why they had to live together when their only goal was to fight demons. The hero put his hand on Daesung's head and said if he wanted to protect him, he needed him close. That was his rule, protect what you can reach. He laughed and told Daesung to stop whining and come inside. The red cloak replied that they weren't kids anymore. The hero thought back to the 100 years he spent in another world, holding on to a brief memory that felt like a marriage. In the end, he couldn't protect everything. But now, back in reality, he told himself things had to be different this time. Cyan called out, saying he was walking too slowly. The hero smiled, still lost in thought, thinking about how surprised Frey would be when he woke up. Later that night, while Cyan slept, the hero called Jung. He asked if the private lab had found anything. Jung said the connection was still unclear. The drugs showed a new type of mana, but calling it demonic energy was just a guess. Even if it was demonic, it might not exist on Earth anymore. It could still be in places like Huchenrak, and HQ agreed. Jung added that issues related to demons were too sensitive, and no country wanted conflict over rumors. The hero quietly cursed. After 10 years of demons building trust, everything was falling apart. He suspected that the strange drug pattern might be linked to the anti-demon faction. It pointed to demonic energy, but there were no solid leads or traces of demonium. The investigation was stuck. He took out a book and wondered if Minjun had studied demonic energy. He searched on his laptop and found a private blog post. The heavy security annoyed him. He noticed the word "easies" in the HTML code and thought it was a strange coincidence. Cyan suddenly stirred and asked what he was doing. He asked if she was awake. She said the ghosts always told her everything, even when he whispered. He sighed and said it was just a short call, joking that the ghosts invaded his privacy. She replied it was the same in the sewers. Then she said she had heard what the scary men said before he arrived. He asked what she had heard. After a short pause, she said Zhang Qian had entered the country. The goods had landed in the Narak and were now spreading across the nation.